Okay, it's about 6 o'clock. Open the August 2nd Planning Board meeting. First thing on the agenda is a discussion with Nick Harris regarding Bassett Knoll Estates. There was a site plan. I wasn't present. Bob and Dan were, along with Ed Buckley from Highway, Leo Castanetti from Longbill Homes, Nick Harris, Rick Rose from Global Construction, and Tim Parker from Niche Engineering. There was some issues regarding a detention basin that hadn't been completed. There was a handful of little things that have not been completed. So at the last meeting, we voted to not release any more lots until these items were completed. And there was a couple issues that had to be addressed. They were addressed out in the field where there was some trees that had to get removed, cul-de-sac that had to get built properly, a couple little drainage issues, and there was issues with the basin. Is Nick or anyone here?
We told them that they didn't have to come today because we could address it based on Nich's report that you're looking at right now.
Okay, well, based on Nich's report, I think we're still not going to release any lots until all this work is complete.
I think if you can reconfirm that vote that the board made, because phase 2 had already been released, so those lots were already released before you made that motion last meeting. So if you could just confirm that you want no lots even in phase 2 to be released, other than that one lot that Lee asked us adjacent to the detention basin.
Yeah, before, if you don't mind, before we take that vote, when we had asked them to not to release any more lots because of the first detention area was 2 years old, we still don't have grass. The second one they're starting to do. Ed Buckley was very concerned about we're going on to 3 years now and we still don't have grass. That's why we said no. We met out there, as you said, Friday, and we had told them to redo the entire first basin with 6 inches of fresh green loam, hydroseed it, put fabric down to hold in all the seed, get a water meter from the water department, water it, sprinklerize it, the whole thing, and they said they would do that. And then at Paddock Road, the pump station, we had 7 trees that they buried 2 to 3 feet. So Ed had a tree survey supervisor, Mr. Glavin, go out there and said within 5 years they'll die. So we told him to remove all 7 trees, expand another 8 feet out because it wasn't enough. They agreed to do all that, and Lee from Longbilt asked if we could release 1 lot. He promised he would not come back in front of us until everything that we discussed on Friday was done. But he said if we could release 1 lot, it would give him the what he has under agreement, and then he plans on going to a project he's doing in Bridgewater until they're all resolved with the town. So we made it pretty clear to them that they weren't getting any more lots unless...
Just a question for Bob. Is there outstanding lots that are released right now, other than that one?
After a brief conversation with Mr. Castanetti, he was under the impression that phase 2, which is his additional 20 for 12 months, wasn't part of your concern. It was going to be moving forward from that. So I just want you to reconfirm your vote so I can tell him tomorrow that no, it's not. It's phase 2 that you're holding back.
So we want to not only not release any more lots, but also, besides this 1 lot, not issue any building permits.
I think if you just rephrase your motion to no building permits, moving forward from today, moving forward until Mr. Buckley has the confidence that the work that was agreed to has been done to his satisfaction, and then we can move forward from there.
Accepting that 1 lot.
Just 1, yeah.
Do we know which lot that is?
I think it was 42 or 44.
It's a lot. I can get the number for you,
But
but it's adjacent to the basin. So
I think if we just, allow that one, because I don't think last time when we released them, I don't think we put numbers on them.
No, we said he could have any 5.
Yeah, so if we just release, let him know that he can have that 1 and none, no more going forward, not even, he thinks he's got more in phase 2. One and done, that's it, he's done.
So if you just simply put a hold on any more building permits, that would cover it.
Okay.
So they know how strong we felt that, and they were planning on getting started right away.
Yeah, I went and walked the site Thursday, and it looked pretty scary, that cul-de-sac. It's real unacceptable. Well, if that's the case, I'd make a motion that besides the one lot next to the basin that Bob described, no further building permits get issued and no further lots get released.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next thing on the agenda, get this stuff in front of me, is a public hearing for 1,000 new state highway site plan. What we're going to do is, we have a bunch of correspondence and stuff that has to get re-reviewed. We're going to let the applicant get up and present his project. No questions get asked during that time, except by the board. Once the project's presented, it'll come back to the board, and each person will have a turn to say what some of their concerns were. I'm sure there'll be others after. And then Bob, the planning coordinator, Bob Iafredi, will have anything he wants to say. And then after that, we'll turn it out to the public. And, by raising your hand, we'll pick each person and get up to the podium. So the applicant can get up and put in whatever plans he has on the easels and state their name. Oh, okay, public meeting notice first.
In accordance with provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 48 and Article 13 of Raynham zoning bylaws, the Raynham Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, August 2nd, 2018 at 6:05 p.m. at Raynham Veterans Memorial Town Hall, 558 South Main Street, an application for site plan approval submitted by Stephen Dragalis, ATG Land Holdings LLC, Shrewsbury, Mass., for the proposed construction of a retail truck dealership consisting of plus or minus 30,500 square foot building and approximately 218 off-street parking spaces. The proposed development is at 1,000 New State Highway, Assessors Map 15, lots 148B and 121A, Raynham, Mass. Any person wishing to be heard or interested in this submittal should appear at the time and place designated. Copy of the application and plan are available for viewing at Town Clerk's Office and Planning Board Office, 558 South Main Street, during usual scheduled hours. Raynham Planning Board, Chris Gallagher, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ed Brennan. I'm an attorney with an office at 1 Church Green in Taunton, and I'm representing the applicant for this amendment to a previously approved site plan. I have with me tonight Buzz Ardiano, who's the owner of the property. I have with me Dan Gagney from Beals & Thomas. He's acting as a civil engineer on the project. The applicant is actually ATG Holdings, and I have Steve Georgalis here with me, who represents the potential owner of the property and user of the property. And from Tech Environmental, I have Matt Reichert, who did the air and the sound quality tests that were submitted with the site plan application. I think certainly the board is very familiar with this site. The previous special permit issued in May of 2017. That previous permit was for 115,000 square feet of what we referred to as flex space. It was, yes, sir.
For the people at home, could you just explain where we are?
Yes, it's 1,000 New State Highway, which is that large open area immediately east of Lowe's. So if you were on 44 traveling in a west direction towards Lowe's, this would be immediately on your right, across from the entrance to Paramount Park. Kind of from one of the entrances. So the previous permit at 115,000 square feet of what was termed flex space which was distributed among various buildings ranging in size. We can use 6,000 square feet as a representative amount, but it wasn't bound to that. They could be combined into whatever the tenants were looking for, and that allowed many various uses to the property. You may recall that we had considerable input from the neighbors on the previously approved site plan, and as a result of listening to what their concerns were, we came up with the plan, which is shown on the plan immediately to the right, with the new building in the light, shaded light blue, and the previously approved buildings in light gray. So you can see that the proposal is to essentially use the site area-wise the same way it has been approved already. I believe we might be 800 or 900 square feet less of impervious area. We did go to the Conservation Commission, filed a notice of intent, and we received an order of conditions from them. It actually was received in the mail today. So a positive order issued. There was some input by Azu Itineru, their agent and review engineer, and we incorporated his commentary into the design. So we've addressed Concom's concern. So we actually proposed to go from 115,000 square feet of gross floor area down to 30,500 plus or minus. The proposal is to use the property for a new dealership for trucks. The Tri-State Trucking is the applicant behind the applicant that would run the operation. They have existing facilities throughout New England. They would distribute, they were Westar and Freightliner brand vehicles, and they would sell new. Their business is not selling used trucks, but if they take a good one in trade, they do sell it on the site. They also maintain and repair warranty work and other work on trucks. All of the work that will be undertaken at this site would be done within the building, which would be soundproofed, to control the noise of the work on the diesels. They also, where they are now, they also have a school where they train and teach diesel mechanics, and they're accredited by the state, and they can teach a person the mechanics of diesels and issue certificates. It's interesting that I asked my client, what does that mean? What does a diesel mechanic do now? And it's almost easy to get a brain surgeon than a good diesel mechanic, the way the sophistication of the trucks now. But 1/3 of his techs at his other distributor, 1/3 of them will earn over $120,000 a year. Outside parts salesmen, which they will have parts sales here, their outside salesman made over $110,000 last year. And a parts counter salesman can make $72,000. So it's a good business. It provides good jobs and good opportunity for individuals, and they can train diesel mechanics at this site. So that's not all, that's a little background of what goes on behind the walls. But the parts distributorship is a big part of the business, the new sales and the maintenance of the trucks. Now, we've submitted the application, and the board referred it out to Niche Engineering, and Niche provided a commentary letter dated July 24th. That was in response to Beals & Thomas's filing. Beals & Thomas has responded to that letter, but Niche has not received that response or hasn't commented back on it, so the board's not going to be in a position to really comment on Niche's response to Beals' response. So what I think it might be helpful at this point in time, if I had Mr. Gagne, who's a civil engineer on the job, refer to the Beals & Thomas comment letter and his response of July 24th and go over some of the issues that was raised by Niche and how we propose to address them through our engineers. I don't think we're confronted with any significant engineering issues whatsoever. Everything seems to be manageable and is quite common to the projects that are before the board. There was also a sound and environmental study that's been done by Tech Environmental. And we have a representative here tonight who can touch on that briefly if the board would like. We certainly won't dig down deep into the mechanics, but I think it would be helpful if the board was advised as to what was undertaken to perform those tests, and then the summaries are in the report. I understand that you may be referring this out to Epsilon Engineering for a peer review of the sound and environmental. We're familiar with that organization, it's a very good engineering firm, so we look forward to their input. So if I may suggest, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gagné to talk a bit about Nich's comments and how they're being addressed, and then I would suggest that I turn it over to Matt Reichert and have him talk a little bit about the sound and the environmental. All right, Dan's up next.
Thank you, Ed. Again, my name is Dan Gagné. I'm with Beals & Thomas. We have an office at 32 Court Street in Plymouth, Massachusetts. As Ed indicated, we've been coordinating with Niche Engineering to address numerous concerns that they had discussed in their letter they provided us last week. Excuse me, right here. Now, if there's anything in the Niche's letter that you guys would like me to address directly, please let me know. I'm going to skip through a few of the comments. Many of them we feel are already addressed in the plans, but if there's something you'd like us to speak to, please let me know. Niche commented on our request for a waiver to provide, request for a waiver to not provide concrete curbing for granite curbing along the front of the building and the entrance. We requested to provide sloped granite curbing at the entrance to the building to prevent truck tire punctures and other incidents at the front. This is something that during our previous appearance before the board that they did not have a large concern with. And then through the remainder of the site, we're proposing to use bituminous Cape Cod berm, something that's low maintenance and can be repaired if damage happens to it. It's something, again, that's not going to cause issue with truck tires. I'm going to skip ahead to Niche's comments on Section 4 of our site plan comment. They requested that a traffic study be performed. We had Ron Mueller provide a revised letter on the traffic impacts at the site. It's included in your packet, and generally the results of that are that the traffic impacts at the site are expected to decrease because of the type of business that will be there, as compared to the approved use. In Niche's general comments, they asked us to clarify why we were proposing 225 parking spaces when the zone requirements require 115 for the building use. The additional parking spaces are anticipated to be used for vehicle stock, similar to any car dealership would need. Niche requested that we include an oil water separator for the interior trench drains in the building. That is something that will be included in our building permits. They also requested that we provide additional oil water separators within the site to contain spills. Now, at the site, it is partially developed, and they had installed the stormwater treatment units which were designed for the original use, the original approved use. In our sizing of those basins, those stormwater treatment units, because the roof runoff runs through them, we sized them to accommodate that additional flow. So when we converted the roof area to pavement area here, the in-place stormwater treatment units will provide the required treatment of water before it goes out into the infiltration basins. Now, the oil water separators, we're requesting that we do not install such a thing because these proprietary separators are installed have the capacity to contain nearly 1,400 gallons of spilled oil. So any minor spills will be contained in these structures, and then in the event of a spill response will have to be, go through and clean the structures out as normal operating. Additionally, the Conservation Commission requested that we provide emergency shut-off in case of a catastrophic spill on site to the outfalls which go into the infiltration basin. To do this, we're proposing to use 2 canal-type gates on the outlets that go into the basin. The Conservation Commission requested they provide signage so that in the event of a catastrophic spill on the site, that this can be shut off, preventing the water, the contaminants from entering into the infiltration basin or eventually into the wetlands adjacent to the site. In the event of catastrophic spill, again, spill responses would be required. The fire department, Green Harbors would have to come in and mitigate any of the spills that would happen. That's about the remnants of the, that's what I'll have to address the comments from Mitch. Is there anything else in specific that you guys would like me to address from that letter?
We just received a lot of this in the last couple of days, so it's going to go back to niche. There's not a lot in here. A lot of it's just, cleaning up some parts of the site plan. The curbing, we're going to have to make a decision on that. The clarification on your parking places is, on a typical car dealership, they have, double what's required or triple what's required, which makes sense if you're a dealership.
I have a question on that. What size are the parking spaces going to be?
There are various sizes throughout the lots because we have parking for vehicles, passenger vehicles, for employees. We also provide tractor trucks parking with spaces that are 12 feet by 30 feet. And then we have storage space for trailers when necessary that are 60 feet by 12 feet wide. So they're large parking spaces.
So parking spaces that size, and you still have, what was it, 225?
Yes, we do.
Maybe while he's up there, there's quite a few waivers. I don't know if you want to go through the waiver list.
Well, I'm a little confused. We have waivers, and then we got a letter that requested were not the same as those detailed on the site plan, so I'm not sure what waivers we're looking at.
I can speak to that. There was minor discrepancy between the waivers listed on the cover sheet of the plans and that was included in the site plan application. To clarify that, we provided that supplemental letter clarifying which waivers we're requesting. There was no additional waivers added to that list. It was just the ones that were included on the site plan was more complete.
So is that the July 25th letter?
Yes, that is the July 25th letter.
Okay.
So we're going to go through the waivers.
I'm not going to act on any of them. but we
No,
can
I
just-
think it's a good idea. Don't act on it, but at
No.
least give them an idea of what we're thinking
I mean,
of.
we still have, Mitch has to come back and agree or disagree with some of how you addressed his comments. We still have to send it out to Epsilon. I don't know if Bob has even heard back from them. You're trying to get a number for you.
This is going to be a long process, so
Yeah,
we
so
don't
it's not going to be something that goes tonight, but we can go through the waivers. We're not going to vote on them, we're not going to act on them. But I can go through each waiver.
Because Nitch's letter, I think the majority of what they have in Nitch's letter is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we're going to get anything back from Nitch. I think the waivers of the applicant.
A lot of them are having to do, like, first waiver, they want a plan supposed to be at a scale of 1 to 20. They have it at a scale to 1 to 40, which is actually the standard scale generally in engineering. Second waiver, 3-foot wide landscape strip provided along all foundation walls. I think we waived these things on the original site plan in lieu of the landscape strips, sometimes they had wheel stops, so they had walls that were concrete 4 feet up. Third waiver, trees should be at least 4-inch trunk diameter, measured 12 inches or 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches above ground, with a minimum 60 square feet of seeded or landscaped. So they want a waiver on tree size.
So just backing up on the 3-foot wide landscape strip shall be provided along the foundation walls. What are you, are you providing landscape strip?
Along the front of the building, we're going to have a sidewalk to access the building, and then we're going to have landscaping between the sidewalk and the parking in front of the building. The remainder of the building is going to have garage doors, so that we'll be able to have that landscaping over there.
The left side of the building is going to have garage doors also?
Yes, both sides of the building will have garage doors.
How about the back?
No, there's no garage doors in the back door, on the back of the building, sorry.
Wait
So
a minute.
you're going to have a sidewalk, how wide is the sidewalk? And it's going to be right up against the building?
It's going to be right up against the front of the building.
You can probably see it better on that larger plan.
Sidewalk along the front of the building is 10 feet wide.
So what do they have to do, cross through the grass or the shrubs to get to the sidewalk?
There's accessible ramps along between the parking area and the...
The plan here shows it, I think, better with the green, those spaces between the green, the access.
But that's not the actual plan for the building, that's the old plan.
Well, this is an overlay of the two.
That's an
So the
overlay, though.
blue is the proposed building. So they'll be parking along here, and there's access ramps
To get to the
to get to
sidewalk.
the sidewalk to the building.
The bollards, wheel stops?
There's striped access walkways there.
What's to stop a car or truck from going across the landscaping and hitting somebody on the sidewalk?
There's slope granite curbing.
Sloped granite curbing,
That just launches
so
them.
that gives them a ramp.
That's vertical in.
You're going to have to address that. Generally, we require bollards, some protection from cars pulling in and going in towards the building. That's all like a glass front entrance, just like a car dealership?
Yes, it is. A glass front entrance there, as you can see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you can see.
Yes, I mean, I don't think we consider slope granite curbing as an adequate way to stop anything.
Okay, we would consider replacing that with vertical granite along the front of the building.
Does the board want anything at the back, too?
Is there any parking along the back?
No parking at the back of the building. To provide vehicle access around the building, we've kept this area open paved space. There is parking
So
only
the
100
only-
feet back from the back of the
The
building.
only place there's parking near the building is the front.
Correct.
Are you going to have to come up with something to address that? And we may or may not even go with the sloped granite. So, but that's not something we're going to act on now. For your fourth waiver, states that a head wall with wing walls protected by riprap aprons should be installed at outlets, at all drainage pipes. Niche notes the applicants provided a combination of reinforced concrete flared end sections or head walls with wing bags and riprap, which I don't think we probably have a big issue with that. Fifth waiver, curbing shall be placed along all paved surfaces. Wheel stops shall be placed with parking spaces, but sidewalks. Curbing shall not be bituminous concrete. We kind of just went through that, and you're going to have to address what you're going to do. You only have that one sidewalk, so you're going to have to probably provide some sort of protection there. The sixth waiver, development impact statement is required for all commercial projects. So you submitted this to MIPA,
Yes, we submitted a notice of project change earlier this week.
so you're going to wait to hear from them?
We are in their queue, yes.
Huh?
We are in their queue, yes.
Yeah, okay, so, I don't know how long MIPA takes. I've done some MIPA reports, and I'll see you next year. But I don't know, depends how quickly that, the project change may not be that bad. But that pretty much sums up the waivers.
Now, the parking, there's no plantings throughout the parking lot? Aren't you supposed to provide islands with plantings?
We've provided islands in the site. We have this large landscape island out front here. We've got some landscape islands throughout the project. With the nature of the vehicles that are going to be moving through the site, having landscape islands will be detrimental and short-lived.
So is there a waiver request?
I think what Dan's getting to is that's in the regs, and there's no, so I think you'd have to revisit
It's in the regs, but there's an awful lot. I believe anything over 5 acres. I don't think you have, anything on the outside perimeter is not an island. So if it's along the outside of the perimeter, and if it's abutting a treed area already, I think you should just relook at that.
We'll be happy to investigate.
Chris, he said to take the waiver request off of this letter,
What's the date on that?
July 25. Starting at the bottom, curbing shall not be bituminous concrete. I'd like to know where he's putting vertical, where he's putting sloped, and where he wants to put the bituminous.
The plans show that we're going to run slope granite curbing up through the entrance. Here's where it changes to bituminous concrete, Cape Cod berm, which is going to run around the project. And then here, it transitions back into slope granite right here, and runs slope granite through the front of this project. Slope granite's in the front here, and we would be happy to change this to vertical granite in this area here.
And what are your entrances, all per Mass Highway?
They are going to be sloped granite, yes. And this is the same entrance
Well,
design that was approved by
MassDOT.
MassDOT. This is the same entrance that was approved by MassDOT in the previous rendition. So we haven't changed anything on there right away.
Now, doesn't it say that there's one tree per 8 spaces? You have 200 and something spaces, so
Yes,
how does that, do you have a landscape plan?
we do. So here's our landscape plan for the project. And we have 225 total parking spaces. We require 33 trees per that equation, and we provide 115 trees through the site.
1 per 8? So you get 200, how many?
Just one tree per 8 spaces.
And where are all these trees?
They're mixed through the site. We've got quite a few in the front here, and then buffers around towards the butters.
You have trees, yeah, you have trees, looks like you have quite a few trees abutting Wendy's, but I don't know if that's going to do us any good.
But so
Well,
what do you?
There is a
what's-
butters off to the woods over here, so we're providing additional buffer in here as well.
Well, you're missing, you know, the butters aren't that, from what I can remember from seeing, I don't think those trees are going to do any
If it's
help.
1
for the
per
butters.
8, that's like 25, 30 trees,
Well, you said it was 30-something trees.
30-something, yeah. I thought he said it was required 13.
No, 33, he said.
Do you have listed what your open space is?
Do not have that in front of me, but it is included on the plans.
Chris?
Sheet 4, get the open space.
Chris, can you go over these?
Excuse me, because I have the whole plan.
Yeah. We pretty much, there was a couple extra waivers in your letter that were included. There's only actually 2 more. One was the 40 feet between property line and the beginning of any parking areas. And you're providing 35 along the back?
Yes, in the front here between this
Oh, okay.
area here.
So you're more than 40 feet parking spaces to all the abutters? All the residential abutters?
I believe that,
The only place you're less than 40 is
I
that
believe
front.
that requirement is 40 feet from the edge of roadway to the parking.
According to this, it's from property line. So in other words, the only place that you're less than 40 is that little section in the front. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, the only other thing was a leveling area with a -1% grade for the first 30 feet coming in. Again, your entrance is on a state highway, so they determine width, grade, curbing, and all that. That's not a jurisdiction, really.
Well, if you, just going back to those trees, it says parking lot containing 10 or more parking spaces shall have at least one tree per 8 parking spaces. Such trees to be located within the paved parking area. So within the paved parking area, everything I see is outside the parking area? So I'm not sure. Within the paved parking area means that it's within the paved area. It's to soften up the parking lot. And so you're not asking for a waiver, but the way you have it designed does not. That's 5.1.5 under parking lot. I don't think that meets the criteria of.
We will look into that and.
Yeah, I remember when
Is it
that
a question
bylaw
waiver
was
or-
done years ago. That was Naughty Newfield. But that was, the intent was to break up, like Dan said, soften the look of the parking lot.
Because you have 200 and something, 225.
225 parking spaces, yes. Again, we would be happy to look into that, either request a waiver or provide the necessary trees.
Is there anything in the development impact statement that we would get past the NEPA review?
Most likely not.
That's what I was thinking. Good.
There was a question on the open space provided. There is, according to the according to the town's requirements, 35% of the site should be open space, requiring 7.7 acres, and we are providing 14.3 acres of open space.
Which is a combination of, how much of that is wetlands?
Considerable amount of it is wetlands, yes.
Where do you have drainage
Up to the
basins? I know you have one out by the street. Are there some others?
This large area here is our infiltration basin for the site.
Okay.
The majority of the stormwater from the project will be going through stormwater treatment devices and being directed to this for infiltration, treatment, and go from there.
Okay, I guess we'll hear from your sound and pollution man.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matthew Riegert. I'm an engineer with Tech Environmental. Our address is 303 Wyman Street in Waltham, Massachusetts. Our firm specializes in air quality and noise, impact studies, permitting, and compliance evaluations. And the majority of our work is in Massachusetts. We provided 2 studies for this project, or for the proposed amendment to this project. The first is a sound study, and the second is an air quality study. I'll speak first to the sound study, and then I'll explain the air quality study. Our sound study was intended to determine if the proposed amendment would comply with the Mass DEP noise policy. That policy is what the State Department of Environmental Protection uses to determine compliance with the state code and defines what is excessive noise. That policy defines excessive noise as an increase of 10 decibels or more over the existing sound levels, or the creation of a pure tone. A pure tone is where the energy is focused on a narrowband frequency, a low hum or a high pitch, and it's specifically defined in the policy. So our sound study had a few steps. The first step was to document what the existing sound levels were in the area. We accomplished that by deploying a long-term sound meter near the north property line of the site, which is nearest to the closest residential uses. That sound meter was allowed to run for a 4-day period and collect hourly measurements for every hour during that 4-day period. And at the end of that period, we collect the data and we can look at the history and determine what the absolute lowest sound levels were during that 4-day period and use those absolute lowest sound levels to determine the DEP noise policy compliance. The second part of our study was to determine what the sound sources are associated with this proposed amendment. And to do that, we traveled to the existing tri-state facility in Shrewsbury and spent a full afternoon and a good portion of a late overnight between midnight and 2 a.m. and witnessed and measured and monitored the sounds associated with that facility.
Can I stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Back up one. You said, how many days did you have that monitor on the site closest to the residents?
I believe it was a Friday morning to a Monday.
So 4 days you had mentioned?
Yes.
And you only spent an afternoon at the Shrewsbury site?
Yes, that's correct.
Did they know you were coming to the Shrewsbury place?
Yes, we coordinated with them, yes.
They turned the radio down?
Why wouldn't you, to do an equal evaluation, why wouldn't you do 4 days at Shrewsbury?
Because the event in Shrewsbury was an attended monitoring. We had 2 people on site.
No, why didn't you do the same monitoring? How can you do a report without doing the exact same monitoring?
Because they're different types of monitoring. One is ambient monitoring. What was done here, it was ambient monitoring to determine what the existing ambient sound level was, and that can be collected by an unattended instrument. At Shrewsbury, it was attended monitoring or sound source monitoring to determine what.
Sound source only for that period of time. This is a very large truck facility that does.
I think if I explain what sound source monitoring is, you better understand it.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. The goal of the Shrewsbury monitoring was to isolate sources of sound at that facility and to assess what their contribution is individually. For example, what is the contribution of one idling truck? What is the contribution from one open bay door? And then, after coming back from that, use that information in a 3-dimensional acoustic model to create the future facility and add those sources of sound into the acoustic model. So yes, we quantified the loudest idling truck that we measured at the facility, and then used that in the computer model for this future facility.
Was that a new truck that you tested, the loudest, or was that just?
We collected multiple trucks. We collected 4 hours of readings at that site on that afternoon, and then at least 2 hours late at night at that facility.
Then your computer, what I'm trying to understand here, it takes that and adds it to whatever you got here. So it's just like taking a 5-instrument band and adding another guitar to it, and then it adds on to it.
So
is that how it works? Like for a dummy like me?
Yes.
Yes. You have your ambient model.
The ambient sound level
sources, and you add them in the room.
Yes.
And then see if it goes up.
And with every added sound source, the sound level increases. Yes. So by using the acoustic model, we're able to account for the orientation of the building, which has the doors facing to the east and the west. Therefore, when those doors are open, the sound is emitted mostly to the east and to the west. And it also accounts for the topography of the site, as well as the sound mitigation, the 12-foot noise barrier wall along the northern property that the project has committed to. And all that is incorporated into a 3-dimensional model.
So the loudest sound you were able to capture for that particular few hours that you were there is the sounds that you applied?
Yes, we took dozens of individual measurements.
On that day that you were there,
yes,
there's 365 days a year.
Right.
So your few hours that you were there, trailer trucks coming in, unloading, I mean, it's impossible for you to be able to do a report
That's not true.
Well,
That's not
okay.
true, because this is typical for the industry.
I didn't go to school for that. I'm only using common
Right, but
sense.
maybe I can.
I know it may be typical for the industry, but I'm using common sense.
Right,
Common
there's
sense.
much more additional conservatism in the modeling than I've explained already.
Okay.
Beyond the measurements that we collected at the Shrewsbury facility, those, for example, the open bay doors, we modeled every single bay door to be open at this future facility. The model assumes a worst-case weather condition. That is one where there is a ground-based temperature inversion. Essentially what that, early in the morning and late in the evening is when the sound impacts of most places are most significant, because there's very little wind turbulence and because the sound can essentially reflect off of the sky in a way. And our model accounts for that during all the time. So there's a lot of conservatism.
Does it take into effect how many employees that are working there?
Yes.
And how many employees at Shrewsbury?
The details in our report. The modeling of this future facility was scaled up according to the existing operations were at Shrewsbury for both the daytime and the nighttime condition.
Well, maybe you can, I saw the report and I went through it, and it's a lot of numbers and lines, and if you could find out how many employees are at Shrewsbury and how many employees are going to be at your new location? Because I would
see
think...
what you're saying, though. It seems
I
like
would-
you'd want to put it for 4 days without anyone knowing it's there, and then see what the loudest...
Well, I have a question. Why would you do the, you want to hold on?
And again, I'm just trying to get the real number for noise, because it's kind of impossible. Some days I'm not moving equipment around as much as I am other days. Some days I might have 3 people to call in sick, so my trailer doesn't leave, or I might not have, I looked online and certain times of the day. What time were you here? The afternoon and late evening? So
Yes.
from what I gather from Massachusetts, the busiest time of a repair trucking place is 9 o'clock in the morning,
We were there.
9 to noon.
We were there during that time window.
I want to go back to my question, if I may,
You were
Dan.
there in the afternoon.
Why would you do the ambient measurement over a weekend? Wouldn't the ambient sound be louder during the week?
No.
It wouldn't be?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Our biggest concern is the late night time period. This is a proposed 24-hour facility. So DEP policy, well, I'm not going to say policy, I take that back. When we do long-term monitoring, that is approved by Mass DEP for certain projects.
Yeah.
Their standard requirement is a 4 to 5 day period over a weekend. And the reason for that is because the lowest sound levels are experienced during the very early morning hours on a weekend or on a Monday morning.
Yeah, but the highest levels have got to be during the middle of the day, during the week.
Right,
wouldn't
yes,
it?
the existing ambient levels are going to be highest
But
as
you
well.
don't get that on a Saturday and a Sunday that you would get on a
Right,
Tuesday
that's why we
afternoon.
collected those on a Friday and a Monday. But the DEP noise policy limits sound to a 10 decibel increase. So that changes over the course of the day. At night, when the sound levels are traditionally very low, then the impacts from a facility are also lower. They're 10 decibels more. When the daytime levels are higher, in the middle of a weekday, for example, like you said, when there's a lot of traffic on like a Route 44, the ambient level is higher, the allowment by the Mass DEP noise policy is higher.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to send this out to a specialist, and Bob would be the one interacting with the Epsilon, and I think he can explain all our concerns. I mean, basically, this project, there's a couple big concerns, and sound's one of them, pollution, and the diesel's one of them, and buffering's another
Right,
big
so
one.
our
So,
sound-
this is going to go out to, this Epsilon apparently has a good reputation, and
My concern with sending it out, which it has to go out, again, they're going to review what he's supplied, and hopefully they come back with some information, other alternative ways of testing for sound. You as an engineer will know you have certain criteria to follow, and yet boundary lines become wrong occasionally at the Registry of Deeds. Engineers do screw up.
No.
So if engineers can screw up and you guys went to college, then I'm saying sound people can screw up and they went to college. All of these things are done by rods and measures, and then it goes to an attorney's office and he says, well, the boundaries don't match.
No, I agree. I have a hard
You know
time
what I'm saying?
believing that
So-
huge trucking facility full of
So-
loud diesel trucks is going to have no impact.
So what
I didn't say
So what I want to just make sure, when he does the review, are we doing a review on, numbers and, what's on paper, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, you meet all Mass
the Mass DEP noise policy?
DEP noise policy.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's policy that interprets what excessive noise is.
Okay.
310 CMR 7.10 is the state regulation for controlling.
So I'm building a house, and I have 2 barking dogs next door, and they are annoying. And I'm saying, how am I going to sell this house? I have 2 barking dogs. How would I do a barking dog noise? It's a pain in the neck. So how can I justify noise when the barking dog, I'm not going to go out and do some calculations on
You
the.
could measure it,
I could, and I could call the Board of Health because it's their responsibility for noise.
and they could measure it.
And they could measure it, and they could go and, but I have 2 dogs, and I'm just looking at how many, 225 spaces. And we'll get into the parking spaces at another time, but, so, it's just hard to believe that you can actually calculate the actual noise level. And again, maybe you can, so we'll see from what happens. Those are just my thoughts on noise.
Okay.
I'm not sure how scientific it is.
Mr. Chairman, while you're talking about noise, they have a 12-foot berm that they have designed into this plan. Maybe you should have them discuss that and how that's going to impact the noise.
The thought I had on that, and I didn't look at your plans or your topo on what's surrounding, but how does that relate to the elevations of the houses around? I mean, if it's a 12-foot berm and it's 10 feet below the house, it doesn't do anything. I don't know. You have some of the houses located, but this is more of a Beals and Thomas question. Could you get elevations of the berm relative to the elevations of like the top of foundation, the top of the, second floor
And
of
type of
maybe
thing?
even before he does that, you did the noise, did you calculate any noise that would travel? Because I know there's a distance that they have noise barrier walls every so many feet away from the wall. It has less, it does less.
Yes.
So-
You're speaking to the geometry.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't
so-
want to speak into it, I'm just.
What you're referring to is regarding the geometry of the noise barrier wall. So the goal of the noise barrier wall is to block the line of sight between the sound source and the receiver. If the noise barrier wall blocks that line of sight more substantially, it's going to reduce the sound more substantially. That's because the energy of the sound travels over a wall, and if it's forced to travel further over a wall, it's going to reduce more. It's going to lose more energy. It's going to be less of an impact over that wall. So that's why we employ a 3-dimensional acoustic model, basically build the project and also build in this 12-foot wall and build the sound sources at their appropriate elevation, build the receivers at their appropriate elevation, and in this particular case, the worst case impacts are at the elevated second-story windows of the nearest homes. So yes, that was accounted for in the model. The impacts at the ground level will be less because the energy will have to go further over the wall.
In your model, you had the elevations of the houses,
At the second-story window, yes.
so you had all those.
Yes, the
elevation relative
existing
to the wall.
topography is available from the state
Yeah,
GIS
state
department.
plan,
That is incorporated into our 3-dimensional model, and then we build the receptors or the homes where we want to calculate where the
Yeah.
results in the study.
Yeah.
Those are at a specific height above the existing terrain, and for this study, we selected the second-story windows.
What happens if the wall was closer to the building?
In this case, it would be less effective.
The wall would be less effective?
Yes. When designing a noise barrier wall, it's going to be most effective if it's closest to the source or closest to the receiver. And it's generally most cost effective to have it closest to the source. In this situation, it's being designed for closest to the receivers and is very substantial and was built at a substantial cost.
What's the receiver?
The home, I'm sorry. The home, the second-story window.
So we have ground noise, and if you bring that wall closer to the ground noise, it has less of a barrier. It has less, it's going to do less than if you bring the wall further away.
So if you have something that's emitting sound, and then you have that ear that's listening to sound, you want to have that barrier be as obstructive as possible, or as high as possible, between the straight line between that source and that receiver, that ear. So by having it directly in the middle, the sound is going to diffract less over the barrier wall than it would if that barrier was closer to the source, more of an angle, or if that barrier was closer to the receiver, that's to diffract more.
How about if you added trees?
Trees will absorb some sound, generally not as much as most people think. Our noise model did not account for any trees whatsoever on the project or surrounding the project to be considered.
Because if this project came to us before we approved that, we definitely wouldn't have allowed to have all those trees removed.
From a noise perspective, trees are not as substantial as most people think because they're not
Well,
dense.
it says in all these reports that I printed out that trees do create some of a buffer. It's not as effective if you were doing one for one, but it also adds a lot if you have a wall and you have trees. If you have multiple sources for the sound to absorb, maybe I think you should look at doing some trees.
Again, the geometry would play an issue because the sound does not always travel in a straight line, and it will travel over trees. So those trees would have to be substantial, and also be maybe substantially close to the source or substantially close to the homes to be significant.
I mean, I haven't seen the elevations, but there's also the option of putting, one of those sine wave sound barriers on top of the berm. If this, sound is really an issue, which it probably is.
Well, seeing we have this, are you done with sound? What else did you have?
Well, I was, so just to finish up my summary of the report, we estimated the sound level impacts of the facility at the nearest neighbors to the north and compared those predicted sound levels to the lowest daytime sound level and to the lowest nighttime sound level, and showed that those impacts were less than 10 decibel increases over those existing baseline levels. Also did not create a pure tone condition, therefore demonstrate compliance with the DEP noise policy. And our report, if you do look at it, it does have some contour figures that help illustrate how sound is emitted from the property and how it's mitigated by that barrier wall.
So, you mentioned it's a berm. Is it a berm or is it a wall?
It's a berm, 12-foot.
12-foot berm.
Shrewsbury has like a 30-foot. You had a 30-foot riprap berm on Shrewsbury. I think this might just be an elevation difference.
I'm not aware of that.
Do you take into any consideration on sound when your surroundings, where this is residential houses versus over in Shrewsbury you have multiple truck dealers, you have a pit, you have a whole different surrounding of sound. So how do you calculate surrounding sound that is totally different than this? You're putting your meter up against whatever trees are left, but it's a different it's a different atmosphere. It's a different surrounding than what you would have in Shrewsbury. So how do we
So the goal of going to Shrewsbury was to isolate the sound sources there and to establish what those sound sources are emitting. So those sound measurements were collected very sourced, very close to those sources, so that we could back calculate through ISO methods what the contribution of the sound power is of each of those sound sources. The monitoring that was done on this site was unattended, was long-term, was to gather a large amount of data to isolate what the absolute quietest time periods were during that period, so that we could demonstrate compliance or non-compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy. So those other sounds in Shrewsbury were not a concern because we were so close to these other sources, where the meter and the person that was witnessing the sound source measurement witnessed that what we were measuring was the dominant sound source, the open bay door or the idling truck, and not another facility.
See, we're on sound. Can I go through a few more of these things?
Knock yourself out.
Noise absorption pavement, is there any consideration for anything like that to absorb sound?
I think you're referring to pavement that's meant for highways.
Well,
that's intended
it's
to,
used a lot on highways. It's
used on highways to reduce the friction between the tires and also add
air that drops into the cavities. That's what makes the noise.
It's to reduce the sound that's emitted from a truck traveling on a highway.
So if we were to look at this and say, okay, well, would a noise absorption pavement work, help with any sound? And again, I'm putting the question out there. It's something for you to look at.
It would if the sound source was a truck traveling on a highway at a high speed, where the friction from the tire in the roadway was significant.
So it's not going to have any effect on sound floating.
It's not going to have any effect on the sound emanating from the engine of the truck.
Okay. If we were to have a 150-foot buffer with trees being 3 trees for every 100 square feet in a 10 by 10 area, is that something that you'd be able to put into your metrics to calculate?
The model does do those types of analysis.
Could you put that into your not that
I can't visualize what you're explaining.
Well, I'm looking at like a checkerboard pattern. If you say 150 feet off the back property line, and you do 3 trees to every 100 square feet, and you go 1, 2, 3, and then you swap the next checkerboard, and you fill that 150 feet off the property. What are those trees, whether the buffer, wherever that wall sits in front of the trees or sits behind the trees, what would that do for our noise? What's that going to do? I would love to see if that's going to deaden the sound, period.
Just something on Dan's point here. This is a whole new filing. So the buffers that were provided for the last
Mean
use
nothing.
that were built mean nothing.
Right, because I think Mr. Brennan mentioned this is a modification, but it's not a modification. I think this is, and again, Mr. Brennan, you can correct me, this isn't a modification of the original plan. The original plan was approved, and that's being put to the side for now. This was all, is a whole new filing.
Right, but we're working off of a lot of what was in the original plan, so it's a modification of a previously approved site plan.
Well, it's filed as a
Well-
brand new filing, basically, right?
We're working off of that, but again, we're working off a clear-cut piece. We have a substantial amount of trucks, noise, pollution. It's a whole different animal. I think if you recall, one of our concerns was outside storage. And the applicant had mentioned, I don't run those type of facilities. I don't have any outside storage. And we said, really? You got 112,000 square feet and no outside storage? He said, no. Signage, very minimal signage, because people that are going to rent from him are going to be known. People are going to go to the location. We were so concerned about dumpsters, we even moved the dumpster to the furthest point. So again, we're looking at maybe, you might look at 112,000 square feet and say, you guys are crazy. What are you worried about this for? If this was a Freightliner truck distributor, puts in, whatever, I don't care if he has 50 trucks out there. You look at every trucking company for hundreds of miles around us, and you zoom in and you look at what they fix and what they work on, and there is everything under the sun. If you see a truck on the road, it's there. Trailers that they unload. It's a massive amount of heavy vehicles with the worst pollutants possible. You have a new facility that is going in, and that's the gold nugget. If this was anywhere else in the town of Raynham, other than abutting a residential neighborhood, I think it's fantastic. I think it's a Freightliner for Raynham. I'm all business, and I've been business ever since. Everybody knows that, whether they like it or not. Anytime you abut a residential property, a lot of things come into play. And again, if that building was there and we had 300 feet of trees, I think we would have said, okay, well, leave those trees and we'll be parking. But we don't. We have that, whether we like it or not. So that's where we stand. And I think
This would have been perfect across from the dog track.
I think it's pretty clear. Permitted use in business district, any wholesale or retail business, research, laboratory, service business, or public utility, not involving manufacturing. On the premise, except for products, the majority of which is sold on the premise by the producer to the consumer, excluding, however, from the definition of any wholesale or retail business, the business of buying and selling of second-hand motor vehicles, which goes to a question, how many new vehicles and how many used vehicles? Because I think
They're almost all new, very few use. They get a good trade-in, they might sell it, but most of them are gone.
so.
Trade-in and gone.
The report said that the reason for the increase in parking spaces is to have more vehicles, more saleable vehicles. I believe that's what it says. You mean to tell me they're going to have that many vehicles for sale at $300,000-$400,000 a piece? Or, I don't know, $200,000 a piece? I just bought a truck. That stupid truck was...
Well, there 400 parking and change parking spaces before. It's the same paved area, it's just restriped.
No, but I'm not looking at what's before. These are, big vehicles. These are big, smelly, loud, air brakes, very loud vehicles.
Dan,
And if you
excuse
go-
me, Dan, to your point, first time they came in with this proposal, I looked up the site that they referenced, that it was similar to. There was everything you can imagine in that lot. There were school buses, there were backhoes, there were anything that was a diesel-operated vehicle throughout that lot. I don't know if you recall that picture.
That's a repair center.
It's not all theirs. Part of what you see in that picture belongs to another party who runs a repair facility and secondhand shop.
And I saw,
It's not all there.
and I saw that,
I saw the picture.
I saw, and it does say it's a front-end alignment facility that is in that back space. Well, that's why I'm trying to understand, 225 parking spaces, and we have all these other facilities all around different parts of the state, Connecticut, Boston. This company has the Shrewsbury, and you look at it, and the size of this is massive compared to all those other facilities. So that's not only is it, it's not the trucking company itself, it's the size, it's the closeness to residential. Like I said, anywhere else, if there's one house that this affected, or will affect, well, that's our job, that's why we're here.
How does this compare to Shrewsbury in size?
It's half the size. Shrewsbury's half the size. Let me just continue. So, provided that no such use shall be permitted which would be unreasonable, detrimental, or unreasonable, offensive, or tend to reduce property values. In the same or adjoining districts by reason of excess, dirt, odor, fumes, smoke, gas, sewage, refuse, noise, vibration, danger of explosion or fire. Underlined portion added at the town. So, that right there gives the planning board all the rights to ask for a larger buffer, a large quantity of trees, anything that we feel that is going to help protect the residential neighbors that are directly abut it. So if we can't, I don't want to just pull a number out of my hat, or I don't think the board should pull a number out of our hat. So if you can give us some more accurate, detailed, what is real life? I know we can go and look at computers, and I would like to see a comparison from 225 parking spaces to 225 parking spaces. I would like to see, there's only one facility that I found, and it was in Rhode Island, and it was Rhode Island Truck Center. They probably had 50 trucks, and it had 3 houses that had abutted. I tried finding, to see if I could call those neighbors to see what kind of noise that they have, and I couldn't. And there's only 50 trucks. It was a smaller, it's not tri-state, but it's a Rhode Island Truck Center. All the other ones were industrial parks. I did not see any other trucking center that wasn't in an industrial park. And again, that's concerning. So, we do, Massachusetts has an idling reduction toolkit. Did you make any mention of that in here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what do you, there's quite a bit in here about idling. How much pollution, it shows it, how much pollution idling of
So,
trucks for 3 minutes, anything more than 3 minutes is extensive.
the Massachusetts anti-idling law, Mass General Law 90 and 310 CMR 711, state that all motor vehicles shall not idle in excess of 5 minutes unless.
I bet you everyone listens to that.
Well, yeah,
Unless-
but if you're working on it and you need it to idle for an hour, you can have it idle for an hour.
But all the vehicles that are supposed to go into the building to be worked on. So there's no idling outside.
Yes, there may be.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
In the winter with diesels?
So you mentioned this report, this idling.
The state anti-idling
Yeah.
law.
Can you read the 3 exclusions from this?
Yes. So a vehicle may idle in excess of 5 minutes. This is in our air quality analysis as well. It's the last paragraph. I'm not sure if you have that in front of you.
I don't.
Number 1, the vehicle is being serviced, provided that operation of the engine is essential to the repair.
So everything in this report we might as well just throw away, because all vehicles are being serviced here. This is a service state.
No, that's not what I said. I said the vehicle's being serviced, provided that operation of the engine is essential to the repair.
All right, so I open up the hood.
Number 2, though, sir, is
Yep.
the vehicle delivering, or I'm sorry, the vehicle, so number 2 is the vehicle delivering or accepting goods for which engine-assisted power is necessary.
Which is a school bus going to a delivery, going to the loading dock, or a truck going to the loading dock.
Correct.
So it's not, number 2 doesn't really.
The vehicle is engaged in an operation for which the engine power is necessary for an associated power need.
And again, that's more for a truck stop if they're needed for heat.
Correct.
So number 1 is really the only one that fits this, and you might as well just throw the toolkit away, because I was looking at it, saying, geez, this is a great idea, until I found out that you're exempt from that. This project would be exempt from that toolkit.
No, a truck idling for more than 5 minutes would be exempt.
I call up Board of Health, and I say, excuse me, I'm the neighbor, and Board of Health, can you please go over there again? Because I hear trucks running. I just got up at 7 in the morning. I have one truck, I said it many times, it stinks like heck. Dust, smoke blows out of that thing. They're gonna go over there and they're gonna say, well, I'm repairing it, I'm working on it. I
Right,
got
if
the
it's a
hood
brake
open.
job, though, it's not essential to the repair.
It's not a brake job. I'm not running the truck for a brake job. I'm running the truck because it's either I'm warming it up or, and you have complaints. How are you gonna control those complaints? How are you gonna control having those trucks, the hoods open, and having guys doing some minor repairs on the parking lot?
Okay, so should I speak to the air quality analysis, Mr. Chair?
I mean, in the winter, you gotta, I don't jump in my cold car that's outside.
Well, right.
You
Well,
can take 20 minutes just to
That's what I'm
load up.
saying. There's all of what's, we can look at reports, but if it says in the report that it's a 5-minute idle, a diesel truck, holy gosh, 5 minutes, you're not gonna get you can plug them in and you have all these new trucks and all this new fancy stuff. And those are not what I'm worried about, and those are not what we should be worried about. It's all of, again, Google all the locations. These trucks are so expensive, the amount of trucks that are actually new on these properties are a handful. Unless this guy's got a big pocket, he's gonna have a lot of, we've got 225 spaces, and we're gonna have all new trucks, maybe a few used ones. I don't think it's gonna fly. That part, I don't see that many new trucks for that many parking spaces. So I guess if we want to be realistic, we want to say, okay, let's have a better number. How many used trucks? Let's figure out the pollution of used trucks. They don't meet, the majority of used vehicles do not meet EPA standards.
EPA standards are always changing, and they're constantly decreasing, and the surrounding air
They
quality
don't meet the standards.
is also constantly
Trucks that are going to this place for repair majority of them will not meet the standards. So all the studies that we do, or that we can read, again, we can read it. That's all it's good for, is reading information. I have, you want to find the real answers, go to Truckers Report and listen to what other truckers complain about. Here's a guy who says, quick way to get lung cancer is to sleep with your windows open in a truck stop. Well, these are all supposed to be good, non-smelling trucks. It's not much the noise. What's a APU? Do you know what an APU is?
alternative power unit, I believe.
Is that what it is? These units, they're like $12,000, and every single trucker complains about parking next to an APU. They,
So they run a TV in their cab. It's a
is that what it is?
generator, it's like a camper.
So we're gonna have any overnights, any overnight stays here? All APUs, why can't you stay away from me? Why you need to run that noisy, fumy, stinky APU that you spent thousands of dollars for? And it just goes on and on. It seems like, this is a truck.
It's not a truck depot, it's not a truck stop.
No,
It's a big difference.
okay, so
What
are
we're
those,
talking about there. I mean, there has to be, we can't live without regulations. I mean, DEP has its regulations, you have to comply with.
exactly.
So when the board considers the issues, I think you have to consider, will this site comply with the DEP regs? And
No,
not
no,
just
no,
say,
no, no, that's
it's not
not-
going to comply.
That's,
It is.
And-
Why
that's
is it
not
24
so.
hours?
What's that?
If it's not a truck stop, why 24 hours?
They maintain the trucks, they work on the trucks 24/7.
24/7?
24/6. Yeah.
24?
It's a big part of the business. All the work's
find it-
done in the building, the building's insulated. I mean, as far as the noise and pollution goes, I mean, I think we have to deflect to Epsilon. It's beyond me to.
But if it's 24/7, they'd be firing
24/6.
trucks. 24/6.
Yeah.
So they'd be firing trucks up
Yeah.
all night then.
Inside,
Well, how do you get them
inside the
inside?
building.
How do you
You
get
start
them
them to
in?
get
Well, you
them.
can bring them in there, but they don't idle outside, they don't get repaired outside. They get worked on inside.
Yeah, but they'd be firing up, constantly moving trucks outside.
I don't know if constantly, but yeah, you're right, you have to get it from point A to point B. But, this, I understand there's a residential district behind, and, I mean, I think they have to learn how to coexist. The residences also moved in next to a business district. So it goes both ways. They have to
Well, it says that we
somehow learn
approved
how to-
112,000 square feet, and we have all of, I think we did everything that we possibly could for that with all the information that was provided to us. And again, the applicant said there's no outside storage. That was a huge concern of ours.
They can always modify the hours of operation.
Yeah, I mean, that's it was an awesome layout, and I think it maximized that piece of property. I think the neighbors got all the protection they deserve. Again, diesel fume, diesel smell. How do you test for diesel? How can you?
The federal government has ambient air quality guidelines that are regulation for various criteria compounds. The state of Massachusetts has adopted those same ambient air quality guidelines. The Massachusetts DEP constantly monitors for those compounds throughout the state. All of the closest monitors to the town are safely in compliance with the ambient air quality guidelines. Even monitors that are downtown Boston, near the busiest of bus depots that see 10 times the traffic that this facility sees, are safely in compliance with the ambient air quality guidelines for particulate matter PM 2.5.
Well, like I said earlier, and Mr. Brennan mentioned, I'm sure it does comply. It's still, the bottom line is what's acceptable for abutting residential properties and what's not, and what can we do to make it so there's absolutely no impact on the abutting neighbors for smell and sound. And 250 parking spots ain't gonna do it. 12-foot wall's not gonna do it. Entire piece is paved. You have, like I said, you clear cutted the entire piece of property. You're not providing any additional, you got 33 trees there that don't even do anything.
I would only suggest that whether the berm will help or won't help, I mean, the regulations exist, the speed limit's 65 miles an hour for me, it's 65 miles an hour for everyone. If we stay within that 65 miles an hour, we've complied. So let's see what Epsilon does with our sound and environmental report and see if they agree with the results. You have to have a measuring stick. It can't be arbitrary. It has to be tied into some standard.
That's in a standard that's the ground level, that's the base.
I mean, I think
You gotta admit, that's
The speed limit 65, 65 for me, it's 65 for everyone else.
right, but that's the base, is the
But
standard.
I think if this came in
I'm using that as an
without,
example.
like we had a daytime operation coming in with a bunch of buildings. And so it wasn't going to be noise at night or anything like that, so we required a certain amount of buffering. And I think the guy fully intended to build all this till he got approached by this other person after he already cut it all. If this trucking scenario came in first, I don't think it would have been buffered like it is. I think it would have been much more substantial. And again, this is a new filing, so it's as if, any buffer can be requested. But it's a new filing, so we're not necessarily sticking to this footprint just because it's already there.
And if we have any absorption or any sound in second floor windows, to me, that's unacceptable. That's all I have.
I guess that's it. If any of the other board members have anything?
No, I think we've said about all there is, but let's hear from a few of the neighbors.
Bob, do you have anything to say?
Well, Beals and Thomas did design a 12-foot berm with some vegetation. Why don't you let them explain to us how that's going to work?
What's out there now that was built?
Yeah, but they're proposing a larger berm
Yeah.
with some vegetation, and he hasn't explained it to the board, so I think you should explain it to the board, and we can go from there as a starting point.
So in conjunction with our sound study, we developed a 12-foot tall stabilized earthen embankment. I have blow-ups on our cross-section from the plan for the board, if you guys would like to see what this is.
And what's there now? How high is the fence?
It's 8-foot fence now,
Is it on a berm?
small berm, yeah.
So this is going to be about the same height as the top of the fence?
We're not seeing the height that it is now.
I mean, if it's an 8-foot fence and 4-foot berm, that's 12 feet.
Probably close.
Yes, it'll be about the same height as the top of the fence is now.
So it'll only be earth instead.
It'll be an earthen embankment, one-on-one slopes on either side, vegetated, using a geogrid inside to stabilize it so there's no chance of collapse of the structure. On the parking lot side, we've maintained a minimum of 12-foot height, and then on the residential side, the height will vary from 12 to 19 feet, depending on what the relief is behind the site. On top of this,
Did you get a copy, Paul?
I'll take one.
Show the extent of where the berm starts and stops.
so it's a bit easier to see on this profile here, on this plan here. Our berm runs almost 1,000 feet from this area here along the back of the site to our infiltration basin here to help mitigate the sound. Now you can see from our planting plan that because it's a stabilized earthen berm, it has to be vegetated with grasses. It can't be vegetated with trees on top. Those would cause, would have wind issues. The trees, if we put them on top of the berm, would fall over and be detrimental to the stability of the bank.
What's the width at the top of the berm?
I believe it's 6 feet wide at the top.
Cross-section
How much?
there.
I believe it's 6 feet wide at the top.
How come you can't make it a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 slope just so you wouldn't have any of those issues? Because that would encroach into your parking lot, I know that, but what other reason besides that would stop you from making it a stabler berm where you could put plantings?
We were looking to maintain the existing footprint as best we could.
Well, the existing footprint doesn't exist because it's a full filing. So that's, none of that matters. In other words, you're working you're holding your constraints of what was already approved, which I understand in a way, but it also, the pavement's not out there, it's all earth right now.
And to fit this berm in, we did sacrifice a large portion of our paved area. We did step back our paved area to provide it.
If we have 225 parking spaces, why do you need all that open space? Why do you need all that paved area? I don't understand from the behind the building section. Why do we?
Just similar to a car lot, so you'd have as much display area as you can, even though.
But it's in the back. I mean, there's no display in the back.
Yeah.
So here we need to provide access for turning of vehicles.
For what?
For turning of vehicles. When a truck and tractor come through, we need to provide that space so they can get over here, dump their trailer if they need to. So this is left open so that vehicles that come through have swing room to get around, which was a large concern of the board when we came before.
But I mean, if you push that whole back forward, they'd still have plenty of swing room. I'd imagine. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of space back there.
It's a massive amount of parking area and if you're not going to park vehicles there, then because you have 225 parking spaces, so why would you need that other area of parking besides a pass-through, which goes to the landscape islands with having trees and shrubbery or whatever in the planting island.
And to clarify, not all 225 parking spaces are truck spaces. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but estimating we have room for maybe 50 trucks here. We've got room for about 20 trailers, and the rest are not pedestrian, but cars, parking spaces for the employees.
back to the berm here, this C3.
Before, just one of these on that. I think that might be pretty important to highlight. Maybe next time, bring up a chart showing how many new trucks, how many used trucks, how many vehicles you're going to have, repair vehicles. If you Google and you look at the places, the vehicles that are under repair is probably 75 vehicles. I don't know how long it would take them to repair all those vehicles. So I don't know how many are sitting there and how, you see an automotive dealer, you go into Meineke, he's got 6 vehicles. At the end of the day, he's got maybe 1. You go back the next day, he's got 8 vehicles. Go back. Here, every truck place you look, there's hundreds of vehicles, just everywhere. So what is it? You know what I mean? I don't know. Is there,
We'll get the.
do you know what I'm saying? How many new vehicles, how many used? I mean, if you do that, because you're asking for 100 more spaces, so I'm looking at it, and from what I read, it says you're asking for the spaces for additional vehicles to sell. Well, common sense says these vehicles are a couple $100,000 a piece. I guess maybe if you give us some better information, we might be able to make a better, understanding of, and maybe now we can say, okay, well, maybe those vehicles don't belong there, maybe let's move them over here, let's put up a buffer or tree line, and so I'm only giving you with what is presented to us, and so.
Just back on the berm then, this C-350 turf reinforcement mat sod staple, what is that, like a green carpet or something that stays there? Like it,
This is a section from Tenzar. They're going to do the final design on this. My interpretation of this is it's a jute netting that you staple down to stabilize
Oh,
the
it's kinda
sod.
like
until
stabilize.
Everything grows,
yeah,
everything,
I know what you mean.
everything will grow through it, and it'll just be a big weed hill.
But I mean, these people are gonna look and it starts right at their property line?
No, it does not start at the property line.
This is the way the green's showing. I mean,
Again-
they're gonna look back at a 20-foot wall?
Well, we have the existing buffer that has been maintained from the previous, we're not
Oh,
clearing any
okay,
additional
yes.
trees. So we started at our previous limit of work and worked forward, so there is a setback along.
So what is the existing buffer?
Doesn't look like much.
Not there, here we have 16 feet, out to 45 feet here.
And I just, let's just say one more thing. When I'm going through this stuff, we have a 55 and older bylaw that requires 75-foot buffer. A 55 and older residential community requires 75 feet from the next residential house.
Yeah,
And
see,
here we are, we have 16 feet from major trucks repair center. 75 feet minimum for a 55 and older, when you get some older 55, I don't want to say old because I'm over there. And we require 75 feet. In business, we require 25 feet and put up some trees.
I think in business, they only have a building setback to residential.
And again, business to business, I don't care, you build on the property line. Doesn't matter. But I think that's something that we should look in our bylaw. If you have business to residential, if we have 2 people in a house, 55 and older, and we're making them be 75 feet from the next residential piece, if it's a residential living, well, we should do the same thing, or, make it 150 feet, and then we won't have these problems.
I think we have the board can do what they want with a buffer, whatever
Well, we
they
can,
feel.
by that article that I read. It gives us the jurisdiction to do that, and I think, that's what we're going to have to do.
Hold on, Dan.
I'm hoping that the applicant will do it for us. I'm hoping the applicant will do it for us and provide some reasonable screening and buffer and put in some more trees.
Besides that buffer right now, Bob, do you have anything else you want to add?
Dave Hewitt from Epsilon Associates had contacted me this afternoon. They're able to review that 39-page report from Tech Environmental. They're not able to do it right away, but they can do the noise and the greenhouse gas emissions report review. Again, they're not going to come out and do their own testing. They're going to review the report that we received, and they said they can do both of that for us for a fee of around $3,000. If the board wants to entertain that, I can call them back tomorrow.
Well, I mean, we're going to send it for outside review, so I believe that's going to be a go. I don't know what their cost would be on independent testing.
Just tell me how you'd like me to direct them.
We need the best
information that is out there. And with what was presented, I don't believe, it may be, and it may meet all the requirements, it may meet their level of decimals and everything else. I just don't think it's real world and it's realistic. So however we can get there, and again, we need that information. You do this, and everybody in this room can feel the vibration. And the room's what, 25 feet? Come on. I mean, how many decibels is that? I have no idea. But when you have these trucks, and you've got their air brakes, and they're backing up, boom, they hit metal to metal. Where is that? Where's that information? In noise. Well, again, how many employees are going to be here? How many people are going to be moving around this place? If this is just a laid-back facility, they're not going to do a lot of business, which I doubt. So I just, myself, I just need real information. How do we get that, Mr. Brennan? I don't know. You know as well as I do.
Well, we know what your concerns are now, so this is going to end tonight. You're going to send it out to Epsilon. I think they should look at our report, and they're going to tell you whether or not the testing methods were proper. They're going to look at it and say, yeah, this was done right or it wasn't done right. If it wasn't done right, then...
He looks like an honest guy. I'm sure it was done right.
So Epsilon will tell you whether the results are valid.
Okay.
If the results are valid, then we meet the regulations.
I'd also like to get a number from them on what,
Do you want them to do their own independent testing?
get a number first, I mean.
I mean, can they review the thing first and see
Yeah.
if they think they have to do their own before we just spend the money to do their own? They may say it's okay the way it is, or they may say, no, we have to do our own.
But we may
sound
want to do
meters.
our own.
And if they do, that's what they say.
You say, well, it meets the regulations. I mean, you could live next door to an airport and the noise meets the regulations, but you don't want to be there. And that's the way I feel for all these people who are going to be abutters.
Yeah, I mean, we have to use the property too, so it's a balance. Somewhere there's a balance. It's like if you're gonna go and, do a perk test somewhere, and the state gives you a rate you have to meet, and the town says, no, I want to double that, just because I don't think it's right, I want to double it. There's got to be some order to how the regs are applied.
We gave the applicant 112,000 square feet approval, so I think we're very,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think we're very letting the applicant use this piece of property. Unfortunately, a very large truck facility wants to come in that same spot, and it's just not a very, it's a tough spot to bring that truck spot in.
We bring you more information. You have to get your input from your expert on the sound and the environment, and then the next time we sit down, we'll all have some more information, and we'll see what the issues are left on the table.
That's too bad they didn't go up to Frank Rosanus's across from the track. I mean, that spot's perfect, piece of land's perfect, it's all cleared and ready just like that.
We're also going to need a lighting plan, like for the next meeting, if you can develop some kind of a lighting plan.
Excuse me for a second, there is one included in the plans.
Okay. I was going by what Nietzsche was looking for earlier, so you must have submitted that to them after the July 24th letter. How about an interior maneuvering plan so that the board can see how the trucks are going to maneuver inside the site? If you're going to request no islands, you should make that a waiver. And the last thing I had, I spoke to, I think, Dan and you today, if the board thinks it's, a good idea, maybe a field visit to Shrewsbury's facility and see how that's operated, so you can compare the two sites. Wouldn't be a bad idea.
You had mentioned the 1,400-gallon tank you felt was excessive. It's a lot of storage. But you also mentioned that you have a safety gate valve to shut off any spill. So if I bring in a tanker truck, I'm pulling off of 24, and I bring a tanker truck over there, and we have a spill, isn't it better to have a 1,400-gallon tank? Because what you were proposing on the plan, how much time is that going to give a person to shut off that safety valve, find out that truck actually has a spill?
Well, the tank's just an oil water separator, right? So
We
it's
have
full.
in place stormwater treatment units which have 1,400 gallons of storage in them
Okay.
combined. the Conservation Commission requested additional protections to have the emergency shut-offs. So we have room for, in each of these structures, the structure here, here, and here, these each have a capacity for about 500 gallons. These have a capacity for about 200 gallons.
But then I apologize. What did you say Niche said?
Niche requested that in addition to that, we provide oil grit separators,
Which,
we believe is excessive because we're going to have all this.
but the safety shut-off is only going to be when somebody gets to the facility and notices that you have a spill, to go and shut that off, correct? I mean, this whole site is blacktop, so if I have a spill, if I have a tanker that's leaking,
There's no intention that there's going to be tankers stored here.
no, trust me, there are. I mean, just go on Google and look at all the other places. The guy pulls off at 24 for a repair. He's got a truck. He's got he needs repair. You're going to tell him he can't come in because he's a tanker?
And again, we have capacity for minor spills, and if there is a significant spill, if it's from a tanker, there's not going to be any room in a oil separator to hold thousands of gallons of fuel.
No, I know, but it'll give you a little more time for that safety valve to get shut off, is what I'm saying.
Wouldn't it make more sense to shut them off at the outlets so you could contain it in the basin and you get all the room in the world?
The basin has been reconstructed with a highly pervious material
Oh,
here, and
okay.
anything that goes in here is going to enter into the groundwater quickly.
So I was just thinking, I'm just thinking if more volume would sound good to me if you have, again, we're not talking about cars, we're talking about a large quantity of large trucks that leak. I'm done.
Okay.
One last thing. Late this afternoon, I got a letter from the Water District, Raynham Channel Water District, about their water tie-in. Do you have any plans on how you're going to bring water to the site now that you can't go into Route 44?
We still have an active permit with MassDOT to put the water line in Route 44. Since they have resurfaced it, we are working with MassDOT and the Water Department to directionally drill beneath Route 44 to connect into the water main that is across the street from us to reduce the impacts on Route 44.
Well, Highway Department is getting called from, what's his name? Geico? What's the one that did the sewer throughout town? Silco? Selco. He's ready to start digging on Judson Street to tie in water. He wants to cut Judson Street, and there's a moratorium on Judson Street. So Ed Buckley is waiting after tonight's hearing to find out what's going on to see. When we were doing this facility, we were coming off of 44. Water Department did mention that they wanted to connect Judson Street, but when I brought up that, okay, if you're going to have to cut down all those trees, then you're going to have to replant trees. And the applicant who's getting up right now said, no, we're not going to tie that in to Judson Street. So
that's about
better
50% of what actually happened. Yeah, Buzz Artiano, North Lake Realty Trust, current owner of the property. So in the process of permitting with the Water Department for the previous project, they requested we come down Route 44, approximately in front of the Enterprise Building. There's a hydrant there. Come down Route 44 about 700 feet and then enter the property. They wanted to create a loop of the water main. They didn't want it to be dead-ended, which is dead-ended now at the Enterprise. So they requested, because we had that, we own that piece of land here, this small piece of land going out to Judson Street. They requested that we install a 12-inch water main and connect at Judson Street to perform a loop. That was their request, not mine. That pipe is in the ground within 5 feet of Judson Street now. It's currently in the ground. And it's stubbed into the main parking lot of the currently permitted.
So that's already in?
It's not tied in at Judson Street. It's at the edge of the pavement at Judson Street, but the pipe is in the ground. and was inspected by the water department before it was backfilled and approved by them. There's a gate valve right here, and then a 5-foot stub of pipe.
So when I spoke to Bill Ward, who was the superintendent of the Raynham Center Water District, this was before all of this came up about 44 paving and you not tying into 44 at the time. He told me that you were not able to tie into Judson Street and that you were going to loop it, but you were going to loop it after the 5-year moratorium ran out. So
No.
I guess, well, that's what, he's in charge of the water department, so he's saying I'm 50% wrong, but I don't know.
No, well, let me clarify that. I wouldn't say you're wrong, I'd say you're misinformed. So, the moratorium is the highway department, not the water department. The water department wants us to connect.
But
The highway,
Bill-
hang on,
what-
hang on.
What
The
Bill
highway-
told, what
let
Bill
me just
told, what
explain what's
Bill
going on.
told me was exactly that. Bill said that the highway, okay, let's say the highway department has a moratorium on Justice Street. You know, they can't tie in. So we told the applicant that we will let him put the pipe, but wait until the moratorium lifts, and then he'll tie it in at that time. That was Bill's words.
Right, and we did speak to the highway department, and he's comfortable now. It's been a certain length of time. You gotta remember, it was 2 years ago I was here, that he's gonna allow us to tie in there at Judson Street, use flowable fill, scarify the surface, put a proper patch on the road. He still wants us to tie in at Route 44. We do have a current valid permit right now to dig up Route 44. The state, District 5, was never informed by the state that they were going to pave that road. They never informed District 5. We have a valid permit. I could go out there tomorrow morning, I have a traffic plan, it's all approved. I could go out there tomorrow morning, set up, hire the police, set up and start digging up that road. Okay? They can't stop us. We have a permit right now, and I've confirmed that with District 5. Okay? So we'd prefer not to do that because it's a nice-looking road now. So we did approach the water department, which was my first choice from the very beginning. There's a water main right across the street to go under Route 44 with directional drilling, tie onto that main, and then go back up and accomplish the same thing, basically loop the water through and provide water from both ends of the property. And
So that's an
where I-
improvement from what you originally had.
I wouldn't know if it's an improvement, but it's the same result.
Well, it's the same result, but it's going to be done. It's going to be done while this project is being done.
It'd be less
When you
disturbance
were
to
in
Route
before,
44.
that was not getting connected to Judson Street. That's what was presented.
Well, I always intended to connect it.
No, you
Yeah.
intended, but at the time those buildings were being constructed, the water department
Highway
the
department.
water department gave you the okay to wait until the highway department was satisfied for
Correct.
their moratorium to be over.
Right, and what he said to me was, once you get going there, if you're still not able to tie in, I want you to post a bond with me of $12,500 to a later date. If you don't tie it in, I'll tie it in.
Okay, so water, you're all set with water. It's not an issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if the board and Bob has nothing else, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone? Guess we'll start with the front row. And then just want you to state your name for the record.
My name is Joseph Reedy. I live at 329 Judson Street. I am one of the abutters. Now, I have a question on the...
Can you point out, are you on that
Yeah.
far end down there?
I'm this house right here.
Okay.
Okay. And I have a question on this site plan here. According to this, this is the limit of the tree clearing, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so this should be all trees.
yeah, if that's what's existing now.
The first few figures 1 through 4, show basically the view from this house, either the backyard, the upstairs, or even the driveway. Also shows the view from about here, looking at this street.
Not to interrupt you, but the view in the trees, they didn't cut the trees down. The view is not, and I agree, you can see it, but
this matches what the plan shows.
No. The reason I say that, this is the fence, correct? The fence is on the property line. You can see the fence.
Yep, this is
On
the
there.
fence. So the fence is on the property? Okay.
Fence
Oh,
is
and
on
so
the property
it's all
line.
cleared up to the fence?
It's cleared up to the fence. Those trees
Oh,
are
oh,
on
that's
my
on your property. Ew.
Oof. That was
Those
that must have
aren't-
been a whoops.
Can we address those one thing at a time?
It's up to the chairman.
Are those small trees,
Can I
they don't, just hold on. The small trees in the pictures, do those depict your property line? Or
No,
those,
those small trees we put in to kind of act a
Anticipation of
little bit
this?
as a buffer. Those pictures were taken in April when there's no leaves on any of the
so
trees.
that fence,
Is shown on that plan, on the property.
so I can
line.
see some trees on the other side of the fence, or no? Yeah, there's some trees on the other side of the fence.
But that plan shows
basically
about
gives
50
zero,
feet
but-
worth of trees.
This was one of my concerns with the height of some things. I mean, if you're sitting here, where were you when you took this picture? In your
Upstairs-
backyard or on the
No,
second floor?
That's the upstairs, window from the upstairs, back of the
Okay.
house.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's an 8-foot fence, you're gonna go 4 more feet above that, and you're gonna, that will be your backyard view, basically, just a million trucks. Yeah, I mean, is the fence in fact on the property line?
Well, that's what I'd like to address. So we're onto the field. That area is heavily wooded along the property line, and I'm going to leave the mic to talk about this. So the fence is actually here. There's a very steep slope here where our two properties meet, and I suggest you come on the field, and we can have Bills and Thomas do an actual survey and locate the fence, but the fence is approximately here on the property. It's not here, because there's a very steep slope, and it didn't make any sense to cut trees down on his land, or right against his land, to make that work.
Well, you can't cut trees down on his land.
Well, you gotta come out there and see it
Yeah.
to understand. I misspoke on that. But right here is a very steep slope between these two properties. I want to say it's probably 8-foot differential in height.
That he's higher.
Yes.
That's
much higher.
why I wanted to know those questions, because a 12-foot,
Yeah.
an 8-foot fence doesn't block a guy when he's already 8 feet above you.
Correct. And those trees that he's showing, I'm sorry, I forgot your first name.
Joseph.
Joseph. I did call Joseph when we were installing this fence, and I said, look, I'm way lower than you. This isn't going to do anything for you. Do you want me to put the fence up on top of your hill? And he said, no, we want to plant some bushes, and I did mail him a check, I think for $1,800 to pay for those trees, or help pay for those trees that are in those photographs, the new trees. So there was a discussion between us about that.
But again, it's a different use entirely.
Now, figure 6 shows the elevation at my house from the septic system that was put in. And the backyard is sitting at about 78, an elevation of 78, according to their survey. According to their plan, the top of the berm is going to be at about 78 along the side of the property. So the berm is really not going to do anything. It's not going to prevent any kind of sound. It's not going to prevent any view. It's basically level with my backyard.
What was this septic done on an assumed elevation or something? It's 30 feet off?
I think the scale was a little off on that. The next page, the second to next page shows the Raynham GIS, and it's got the elevations. It's got the same lines, just with 70, 72, 74, 76 instead of 100, 100, and 200.
Where is our sound guy? He didn't leave, did he? Oh, here he is. Could you just come here for a minute, please? And again, if we were talking about that 12-foot wall, that 12-foot slope,
if his backyard is at the same elevation, will that do anything for sound or for smell or odors and for him? Say the properties that are in the front, or to this case, the back of the property, and if they're up here and you're down here and your 12-foot wall just levels it up, is that going to have the same effect that your calculations?
I don't fully appreciate this here, but the goal is to block the line of sight relative to noise. Yes, so so the geometry does play a role.
Okay, when you mentioned that you have second floor, it affected the second floor windows is it second floor windows his house or second floor windows of somebody that?
Any of them that had second floor windows.
Oh, any of the abutters?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they all have second floors. I don't recall exactly, but I think there may have been one single floor residence in that neighborhood.
Because I think the group home? Wait a minute. So I think, just where that information came from, just show a plan, I would say, where you monitored. So we're not guessing. We're not saying, okay, this guy's, level with the top of your fence. How is his backyard? Everybody's different. So where's your monitoring system based on their yards? I guess is
The locations of the monitoring impacts
for next plan.
are in the sound study.
Okay.
Now,
Maybe that sound study, maybe that section of the sound study can be part of the board that we put up so we can.
His report also, it does have what he based the elevations of the house at. And you can see that on this page. I basically reworked the numbers, and basically the elevations of each of the lots are this number here, and that's the address. And they're pointed to at each of the individual
You
lots.
should give him a copy of that. I think he can have my copy because I don't understand all the numbers.
But for the 329 Judson Street,
And I'm only suggesting that just so, again, these are the same people that will come back next time. And if we're disagreeing, then we're just going to keep disagreeing. And like I said when I first started, this is going to be a long meeting, long meetings. So if you can, and I know he's not, an expert, or he's not, well, let me back up. I always put my foot in my mouth. You may be, an engineer, I have no idea, but he's not somebody that the town hires. So these are the people that we're protecting, we're trying to help protect. So if there's any additional information that he's providing us, I don't know if it's accurate. So maybe Mr. Brennan can direct who it goes to.
as I was saying, he's predicting the elevation of my house being at 72.66, where that shows the backyard is at 78 and the top of the foundation is at 81. So his numbers for my house are not correct.
Were his numbers exactly like this to the 1/100th?
They were in meters. I basically.
But I mean, his number's called 26.72 meters?
That was what was on his report.
Did you actually go out and shoot it by survey? How'd you get that accurate? To the 1/8 of an inch?
There's data available from the state, and it's not
Accurate,
it's not
obviously.
surveyed, obviously, so it's not as precise as taking a spot measure.
It's not as precise as what you have down here, because,
It's
yeah.
readily available to the public, and that's what we use to bring into the computer model to simulate what the existing topography is.
So again, that goes back to Mr. Brown, maybe computer models and, Google Earth and all those other elevations that we can do by our desk. I think maybe we get the engineer of the project and him to coincide with their heights and elevations, and if we have all that information, then
So basically, the sound study's based on elevations that are plus or minus 8 feet.
plus or minus 8 feet, and, and again, we're
I mean,
assuming,
they're
we're
off
only
some
going by
Google.
information that's given to us, so, that's why I say,
Now, I have another question about, on the sound report, figure 2 shows where they have the berm located for the sound report, and they have it hugging the property line. But according to this, it is 50 feet from the eastern property line. Does that affect the model? Does that affect the results?
It actually would give...
If the berm is not in the proper, is not in
The
the correct
closer the
location.
berm is to this sound source,
No, where they're saying the berm is and where the plans are saying the berm is, it seems to be about a 50-degree difference on the
if
eastern
they had the
property line.
berm on your property line,
Correct.
then it would be conservative results, because the more farther away the berm is from the sound source, the less it protects. So if their model had the berm on your property line, it's a more conservative answer, because the closer it is to the source, and I think it's just like projectile motion, where you set it at a 45-degree angle or whatever it is from the halfway point. So the farther away, you're getting less.
Bottom line is,
It's
put
coming
the
down.
results to where the berm is. Right?
Yeah.
If the berm is 50 feet from the property line, make the results, what are the results at 50 feet? If it increases, great, that's even better for the applicant. Guy's got a, zero noise.
Now, they also said that there's going to be some sound sources on the roof, the HVAC system and the ventilation system. And they said the HVAC system is about 88 decibels and the ventilation system's at 93. Now,
That exceeds this, what's the state,
I don't know. But they're saying it's between 20 and 30 feet up. So that source is going to be above the berm. Does the berm have any impact on that sound if it's above the berm?
there's gonna be a position on the board in a couple of years, you should run.
Oh, wait till she gets up.
So that's another good point, and it's, again, I didn't even think of where the units are gonna be. We have had Johnson & Johnson, how far away from they are from South Street, and we've had issues in the past with generators, and same exact thing, and they had to go back and build walls around it, and he's standing up back there.
I was just going to say, so yes, the sound study assumed that those rooftop HVAC equipment was on the roof, to be conservative, because at the time, we did not know, and in Shrewsbury they are, but I've learned that they're not going to be proposed on the roof, they'll be at ground level, which will benefit the units.
Another question I had, when they were doing the ambient sound monitoring, they had the monitor in this location here. Now, this is basically it's about around here on the property. Now, what is recorded here, is that basically the ambient sound for the entire 17 acres of the property?
I need to go through the board.
He's the chairman.
Would that be the...
The intention is that it's an ambient sound measurement that represents the residences in that neighborhood.
So what is over here is representative of what's 500 feet away?
That's the intention, yes, when it's set up.
Okay, that's the intention, but is that what actually happens in practice?
I don't really think there'd be a whole lot of difference from that side of the bare open gravel to the other side of the bare open gravel.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have an 8-foot elevation difference, they might be.
And I was curious why one was done here, maybe one wasn't done here, and one wasn't done here, just to...
The thing is, you'd think the ambient sound you'd want to take from the abutting property instead of from something that's clear cut and wide open to the highway. So it would make it look like there was less of a change with it on the open site versus if it was in the property in someone's backyard where they have their barbecue. The noise they get in there is probably a lot different than what you're actually getting out on the open, clear-cut place.
Yeah, I just have statistics, just.
No, I agree with you. But, you know, you have to go
Oh,
by
I
some
know,
method.
no, I know,
mean, that's-
we all have, I love rules. And that's how,
He doesn't like us engineers.
and that's how you get to start anything.
Okay, moving on. Any other hands? Big Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Pacheco, Selectman. I just wanted to address the board on a few quick comments. I typically don't make a habit of addressing the planning board. I think I've only done it one other time in my 12 years as a selectman, but I did receive some calls from residents concerned about this project, and I think it's important to note that this is a significant departure from the original plan, as the board has noted, and I don't think it's a beneficial departure. I don't think it keeps up with what we've been trying to do on 44 for the past 15 to 20 years. It's not consistent with what I think our goal has been, what our vision has been, and I would just add a couple other thoughts for the board to consider as you move forward with these hearings. Noise has been talked about at length, and I give Mr. Andrade a lot of credit for the tremendous research he's done on a lot of these different areas. So I'm not going to belabor the point on noise, other than to say in the 12 years that I've been a selectman, the calls that I cringe at the most are the noise calls. Because the Board of Health in Raynham, and I am on the Board of Health, is not equipped to handle noise complaints. And so what we do is we send out the police. And in order to have anything significant to enforce, we would have to bring in an outside independent noise contractor at significant expense to the taxpayers to quantify complaints. So that's one concern that I have. The other concern I have, and I know it's a real near and dear to Mr. Fountain's heart, is the unloading of vehicles on 44. We worked with the state a couple years ago to get signs posted that vehicles cannot be parked or unloaded on 44. We still have significant problems with a lot of dealerships. This site is going to have a lot of people driving to it that are not familiar with our roads, our regulations, so it could potentially lead to additional enforcement action by our police department, and we should consider whether or not we're adequately staffed on the midnight to 8 shift to handle that. And public safety in a greater scale, this is a 24/6 operation. A lot of our businesses are closed at nights, and that helps the police and the fire department in terms of the ability to respond to calls. This is going to be operating all hours of the day, and if, God forbid, an accident occurred there, we need to make sure that police and fire are adequately prepared to respond to those calls when they're not normally responding to them. And my final point, Mr. Chairman and the board, is you're going to have, as Mr. Andrade pointed to, significantly large vehicles on roads that they're not always familiar with. We have a number of MVAs on 44 on a daily basis. If you look at the police call log, they have over 1,000 calls a month. These are going to be people driving our roads that are not familiar with our roads, driving huge vehicles that could cause significant adverse impacts to other motorists. And so those are the comments that I have. I appreciate your time, and I wish the board luck as you continue to deliberate. Thank you.
Appreciate your comment, Joe. Yes, sir.
Brant Cruz, 279 Judson Street. I'm a direct abutter. Thank you to the board for letting me speak. I've got a lot of questions. I'll rapid fire some of the ones that are, I think, most pertinent, and then hand off if you'd like to have paper copies or something of the other ones. I'm wondering how many diesel mechanic certificates have they issued through July 31st of this year, based on the certificate program that's there. I'm wondering what assumptions they've made about the demand for service and the number of repairs per week that has necessitated the need for 21 days in Raynham. I think that it's a massive departure from the Shrewsbury facility, an increase, so I think that your instincts are right in terms of how they plan to use the space. You did some Googling yourself. I thank you all for the research you did. I went to the Shrewsbury Google page, and there were 74 comments from truckers about the Shrewsbury facility. I stopped counting after about 50, the number that were about service, and there were none about any new vehicles or sales. One of the comments, wondering what the facility plans in terms of towing and the percentage of vehicles that arrive towed versus driving there on their own, as far as towed vehicles goes, at least the Shrewsbury facility has separated themselves from towing altogether. From a response from someone who stated that they were the owner of the Shrewsbury facility, who seemed pretty well informed in response to the comment. They said, Tri-State Truck Center, Inc. does not own, nor are we affiliated with any towing companies. We open for business each Monday at 6:30 a.m. and do not close until 3 o'clock p.m. on Saturday. We also provide emergency breakdown 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We generally have over 100 vehicles in our customer parking area and another 20-plus awaiting repairs from our service department. So I think that to get a sense for what's happening in terms of the repairs, I think this is mainly a repair place.
Now, you're referring to Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury, yeah.
So
We're-
I'm sure they'll
Yeah. They're essentially doubling the number of days.
They'll let
for
us know how
Shrewsbury.
many new vehicles, how many used vehicles.
Are the bay doors kept open when repairs are being made? I think that maybe that's been answered, that they're always closed.
Well, they can't
What is
always
the
be
procedure?
closed.
That's what they said.
You got 21 bays. You're gonna have the doors open and closed, and cars are coming in and out all night long.
What is the procedure for middle-of-the-night
Absolutely.
repairs? Is there a designated time frame for drop-offs, or will the vehicles in need of repair arrive and/or be towed in all hours of the night? For vehicles that need repair in the late evening, early morning hours, where do the customers wait? Is there a designated waiting area, or will they be left to find somewhere on their own to wait to pass the time?
Walmart.
Yeah.
We do have a police problem with Walmart contraband being in the parking lot, so Walmart refused to have trucks parking overnight, so they all got a Lowe's, and that lasted for about 2 months.
Related to towing partially, and related generally to the conversation earlier about spillage and those things, do you allow vehicles that contain hazardous materials to be repaired at your facility? And for these next several questions, I'm defining hazardous materials as Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 hazardous materials. There are federal regulations around those, around a motor vehicle which contains Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 materials must not be parked under any of the following circumstances: on or within 5 feet of the travel portion of a public street or highway, on private property, including premises of fueling and eating facility. I'm not sure if you're having fueling or eating happening, without the knowledge and consent of the person who is in charge of the property and who is aware of the nature of the hazardous materials the vehicle contains, or within 300 feet of a bridge, tunnel, dwelling, or place where people work, congregate, or assemble, except for brief periods when necessities of operation require the vehicle to be parked. I think the last point, I am not an engineer, but I would consider myself an expert in
Nobody's perfect.
experimental design and sampling, 30 years in consumer insights. I think your instincts were great, Member Andre, when you were talking about the dog and doing a sound report around the dog. I think everyone would agree who's involved with modeling is garbage in, garbage out. That's the result of anybody who does any modeling. I think that if I was able to muzzle the dog or feed the dog right before the estimates were taken of the various sounds, that would change the results. So I would implore you to consider not just a peer review, which will look at the methods, which I think, I'm sure the model is great. It's the value of that model, though, is based on how representative those 4 hours of time were to the highest level sounds. So if you had collected sounds that were twice as high, twice as loud during those 4-hour times, I'm guessing that the models would come up with very different results. That's it.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Bill Perkins. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at People Incorporated. We own the property at 317 Judson Street. And for point of reference, it's the property that you see clearly when you're going down Route 44 now, in the absence of all of the trees that buffered the property previously. Just have a brief written statement. The Residential Service Division of People Incorporated has been providing community-based residential supports for over 40 years, and we continue to provide premier supports and strive for the highest quality of life for each of those we serve. We believe that each person should be integrated into their community in a way that is meaningful for them while we assist them in facilitating relationships with family and friends. Our Judson Street home in Raynham has always provided a beautiful and peaceful location for our senior residents. It has an outdoor patio area for housemates to enjoy with friends and family. With the clearing of the land beyond its once pastoral backyard, this property now has no trees behind it to act as an environmental buffer. Prior to the clearing of the lot, the natural vegetation reduced the air and noise pollution from the commercially developed areas nearby and provided a visually pleasing atmosphere. The lot has now been fully cleared and graded for project development. Tri-State Trucking Center proposed 24-hour operation in this cleared land off Route 44 that abuts our Justin Street Homes property will now be exposing our senior residents to constant noise pollution and diesel fumes. The quality of life will be affected by negative environmental impacts to this residential community. Considering both the already cleared land and the potential for continuous commercial disruption per Tri-State Trucking Center's application to operate in such close proximity, thereby negatively impacting our residents further, People Incorporated expresses its vehement opposition to Tri-State Trucking moving forward with its proposed plan. I'll leave this for you, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. That does bring up a point I didn't think of. When this noise study was done, this is a whole new application. So assuming that, you know, if it came in front of us before, the noise study would have been on your properties, and all this wouldn't have been cleared. So it's a totally different ambient situation than it would have been prior to anything going in here. So in that, I think it could be flawed in that way, just because you're already working on something that took all the whole noise barrier out. So anyone else interested in speaking, Pam?
Pam Coney, 339 Judson Street. I have some packets for you guys as well if you want them afterwards. But just, it's late. I know everybody's tired and hot. I'm here and I'm speaking for quite a few of our neighbors on Judson Street and the adjoining areas. So what I have to say is lengthy in nature, but it will prevent 10 people from coming up and saying the same thing in a different way. So if you can bear with me, I'm going to do my thing and read my speech. And
Have at it.
okay. I know there was a lot of questions about trying to envision exactly what is going to be in the back area of the proposed project. I know that one of us had gone to the Shrewsbury plant, and it is an apple and an orange, Shrewsbury and Raynham, but I think it's important to remember that Shrewsbury is a smaller plant compared to what's being proposed in Raynham, and we have some pictures of what we saw in Shrewsbury. So if you guys would like to look at them, I do have them. Let's see. I just don't want this phone. I have copies if you want them, but for now. And again, this is from Shrewsbury, which if you do bear in mind, this is half of the size of what is proposed. So there is a variety of vehicles. I don't know what they are. I know that they're not, there's a whole bunch of them. Let me start with this.
That's the picture that I had looked up.
But I think Dan's pretty spot on when he's saying how many $300,000 or $400,000 trucks are you going to have. It's really, it's kind of like, not like a car dealer where you're going to have a bunch of cars that sit there and aren't running all the time. It's a repair shop.
Right. The variable, I don't know how you could even predict what would be there. There was a septic tank there. There was, and again, I'm not
I mean, why would you be open 24/7 for a repair shop if you're a car dealer?
Right. And you're not bringing nice, happy, clean cars to be open there. So I'm going to start now. And again, this is on behalf of quite a few of us here. Some of the areas are already covered, so I'm going to take a minute to skim through, but what we'd like to start with is that the majority of us have lived where we live for 17 plus years. We have coexisted peacefully with a variety of businesses on Route 44 that abut our properties. We expect and experience a reasonable amount of noise, lighting, and activity generated by these businesses. To name a few, we sometimes hear when the dumpster at Wendy's is being emptied. Usually it's in the morning. It's fine. We expect it. It's part of the course. We hear when car salesmen are being paged at Hyundai.
Hold on, Pam. I'm going to kill you, but you have to stop.
Go ahead. You're breaking my spirit.
You were in motion
I
there.
was just not getting nervous, and now I'm back to being
You
nervous.
don't have to be nervous. We're all friends here.
I know. Okay, so we hear Wendy's emptying their dumpster. We hear people being paged at the car dealerships. Sometimes we get an obnoxious person who thinks it's fun to play their radio at the car wash at 10 at night. That's fine. It's expected. These noises are irritating. They're minor in nature, and we accept that they are part of the normal daily activities associated with businesses. It is our thought that the proposed project does not fit the same criteria or business types with the other surrounding businesses in that area of Route 44. The nature of the business and the hours of operation will create far more noise and pollution than what is considered reasonable. The repair portion of the business is open 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's 135 hours of continuous in- and outgoing traffic, repairs, noise, and pollution. So I'm going to repeat that again because it's 135 hours continuous of in and out. That's nonstop. That is not reasonable. That is excessive. We are concerned about the long and short-term health effects and risks associated with diesel fumes and pollution. I have a lot of articles here that just show what can happen after a period of time. Studies show that short-term exposure of diesel exhaust can cause coughs, bronchitis, headaches, and nausea. Lengthy exposure can risk lung disease, heart disease, brain and immune system issues. I'm not going to read all the articles. Nobody wants that. But I think it's important to note this excerpt from the American Cancer Society relative to the hazards of being exposed to diesel fumes. Under the heading of Where You Live and Play, it advises to limit or avoid spending time near large sources of diesel exhaust, such as near trucks and buses. That's our backyard. Many of our backyards are adjacent to or in very close proximity to the site. For all of the homes, it's interesting that we talked a lot about the second floor windows because for all of the homes that do have second floors, adhering to this guideline by the American Cancer Society would result in us keeping all of our windows closed to avoid exposure, not to even mention the odor that would undoubtedly permeate through our homes. There's another excerpt here on health issues, but I don't think it's really necessary to go in that. I do have the articles. You can read them if you so choose to. I think everybody gets a general idea that we are very concerned about health issues. If you do any type of research, you can find studies that prove you're increasing your risk or a length of time, no matter how small. So that's where we stand on that. The big issue that we have, let's see here, is that it's going to affect the value of our properties. It's also going to affect the marketability of our properties. So we've consulted with a few people in the industry, a couple of local realtors, and also a mortgage underwriter to get his take on the other side of the procedure. I will read a letter from Paula Noonan, who is a local realtor, and she has provided us with her professional analysis of this situation. I have reviewed the information regarding the potential plans for the property abutting your home and your neighbors' homes. Having a 32,000 square foot industrial building with 21 interior bays for tractor trailers and 224 parking spaces for trailers, tractor trailers, and cars will be an enormous detriment to the value of the homes that not only abut this property but to those in the immediate vicinity. The noise, distracting lights, and constant rumbling of the tractor trailers entering and exiting hurt the value of these homes tremendously. It is my opinion that the values of these properties could be lowered by this potential business by 15 to 20% or possibly even more. I have been a full-time realtor for over 30 years with a focus on the Raynham area for the past 18 years. I have experienced this type of depreciation before, and it is very harmful to the residents' property values as well as their right to enjoy peace in their own homes. And again, that's from Paul Noonan. I have a letter here from, I can't read his name, Eric Ritchie, or Richie. He is a senior loan officer with Leader Bank, and he's offered his opinion on how this project could affect he's a mortgage writer. In a letter dated July 31st, 2018, Mr. Ritchie writes, "Dear Mr. Cruz, thank you for your phone call yesterday and for explaining your situation to me. I'm going to skip over the pleasantries. Let's see here, get to the heart of the matter. As you know, the only way to get an accurate assessment is to go through the process in its entirety. That being said, I did examine the PDF files he sent to me via Northlight Realty Trust, which include the site plan application, air quality assessment, and sound study. My quick examination confirmed what I suspected when we spoke. Number one, I think it will be very difficult for any appraiser to find the appropriate comps needed to properly complete the underwriting process. Number two, even if comps did exist, it appears difficult at first glance to assess just how comparable they would be until the project was completed and the full extent of the likely pollutants, noise, and odor could be assessed. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting and scary for those of us that live there. I make these statements because in my 28 years in the mortgage business and across examining and underwriting more than 2,000 loans, I have never seen a mortgage application for a property that has abutted a project that is as potentially disruptive as this one appears to be. Rules of thumb for comparing properties in traditional residential neighborhoods versus those that abut commercial zoning with more common businesses, for example, comparing Judson Street to White or Locust Street, assuming the properties on those streets were otherwise similar, would not be difficult, and it might result in an otherwise apples-to-apples discount of 8 to 10% for Judson Street. The Northlight Realty project feels like a different level of complication. It is complicated because all of the issues above, and it is complicated because of the underwriting process itself and how that plays a role with buyers. Minimally, I would expect that the underwriting process to take meaningfully longer, perhaps even 2 weeks longer between the search for comps and the translation the underwriter needs to make between those comps and assessing risk to the bank. Obviously, all fair lending practices need to be followed, but beyond that, the underwriter has responsibility to limit risk and exposure for the institution on every loan. It seems fair to say that the project itself limits your buyer pool immediately. Many buyers might be unwilling to buy a house with that type of business in its backyard, regardless of the discount. The likely complexities of the underwriting process could further limit the pool as buyers who might otherwise be interested, but they could get cold feet while waiting out a lengthier process. Given all of this, my best guess is that you should plan for an additional 10 to 20% discount on top of the typical difference between neighborhoods that abut commercially zoned properties and those that do not. Okay, so I have one more analysis that is from Dan Gavea from Keller Williams. His study was a little different. It's not in the form of a letter. Through no circumstances beyond his control and our control, he was called yesterday to do this analysis, and he pulled it together very quickly. So the information that he has here was given to him through communication with pictures, verbal communication about the details of my home, the surrounding area, and based on the information that he had and the area around, he gave a comp between my market analysis now and my market analysis if the proposed project is in place. There's a $20,000 difference, which I hesitate to bring this up because when he brought this to my house this afternoon and he actually saw the home in person, it's not an accurate report, but it's not accurate because if he did an accurate report with a site visit and his own analysis and not just going on last-minute pictures sent to him or conversations about the condition of the house, he said the loss would be significantly greater. When he dropped this report off at my house and he actually saw the home and the area around it, he said that I was conservative, I was going on what you told me based on the condition. So the loss in writing is a $20,000 swing, which is minimal compared to what the other brokers are speaking of. But be aware, this report is flawed in the sense that he was going on secondhand information at the 11th hour. Again, if he had had the proper time to do a full analysis with his own site visit, he said the loss would be significantly greater. So, where am I going with this? We are going to find out right now, I think. Okay, so the applicant has offered sound and air quality reports that meet the minimum standards that are required by the Commonwealth of Mass. Although these minimum requirements are met, it does not mean that they are acceptable standards for us or that they fit into the bylaws of Raynham. Dan read the bylaw. I have the verbiage right here. I'm not going to repeat it, but it's important to restate it because it says no such use shall be permitted which will be unreasonably detrimental or unreasonably offensive or tend to reduce property values in the same or adjoining district by reason of excessive dirt, odor, fumes, smoke, gas, sewage, refuse, noise, vibration, danger, or explosion of fire. We maintain that this project violates several of those, and I have proof that we will feel it. I mean, these are seasoned professionals. This is not me getting up saying, I'm going to lose property value. These people, this is their job. We have 2 realtors. We also have a mortgage originator that even if we did find a buyer, somebody wants to buy a house that abuts a 24-hour operation, they could still get stalled when they get to the underwriting process, and they may not qualify for the loan. So I'm tying these comps or these analysis into why we maintain this does not fit the bylaw, because we are at a loss for property value. And I do think it's excessive. If we go back to how many hours it is, it's 20, there's no break, there's no reprieve. They don't shut down at 6 o'clock, they don't start at 8 and close at 6. This is 24 hours a day with maybe a little break on Saturday or Sunday or whatever day they close at 3. So the other issue that I see I would like explored, if possible, is that additionally, with these repairs being offered 24 hours a day, the traffic and the noise generated between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. will be steady. It's not going to be as steady as it is during the day, but it's going to be steady enough to interrupt and infringe upon our peace and quiet during overnight hours. We also maintain that this would make the project non-compliant with the Raynham General Noise Bylaw, which reads, it shall be unlawful for any person or persons being present in or about any building, dwelling, premises, shelter, boat, or conveyance, or any part thereof, other than that section of any establishment licensed under Chapter 138 of the General Laws between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. to cause or suffer or continue any loud, unnecessary, excessive, or unusual noises. So we are of the opinion that if they are open 24 hours, they would also be violating the General Noise Bylaw. And like was mentioned, what do we do? Call the cops every 5 minutes when a tow truck comes in and drops something off? Because we will, and nobody wants that. The police don't want it. They don't have the time for that. It's not a good, I don't see it as a good fit. So I'd like to wrap it up. Everybody is tired, and I just want to address a couple of issues. On a personal level, on behalf of all of us, we are not naive. We are all aware that we chose to purchase property that runs parallel to Route 44, and we are aware that this is business owned. The existing businesses on Route 44 are businesses that one would typically expect to see in the area. We expect restaurants, strip malls, professional business parks, a standard car dealership. We would not expect to see a business of this nature and size in the area. We are not anti-business by any means. None of us were really happy with the original site plan that was presented and eventually approved. But we recognize that what was proposed fell within the guidelines of the zoning bylaw and was within the developer's legal right to construct his business, even if it changed the entire landscape of our quiet wooded neighborhood by the elimination of pretty much every single tree between Route 44 and Judson Street. And I'm not sure if you've been down Judson Street. I'm pretty sure everybody's been down 44, so they have a clear view of it. But this also, which may or may not have occurred to people, this affects the people that live across the street from 44. So when we talk about, well, you bought property that abuts 44, you should have known better and all that, this affects the people that live across the street just as much. That's their view all the time. Who would have ever thought that if you bought a piece of property that is on the other side of Judson Street, but not abutting it, like they are in a worse shape than I am. I am not a direct abutter, but I'm next to the Reedies, which is over the other side, and I have a clear view in the wintertime. It looks great now. If you did a site visit, if you went to the Reedies' house now and you went to our house now, it would look wonderful. The trees, the few trees that are on my property or on Angela's property, they present a small buffer. Go there in November, from November to April, there is, I call it the Great Plain of Texas, because you can just see everything. There is nothing. So you can propose a berm, which is still unpleasing to look at, but that does nothing for the people across the street. So, again, to wrap it up, the abutters, this affects more than just the direct abutters. Nobody ever would have thought the people across the street, or the people 3 houses down, the people that live in Deer Hollow, this noise is going to travel to them, and if they sell their house in Deer Hollow, who's going to want to drive down Judson Street and look and see this big truck company, and they're going to immediately say, nope, not going to do it. So it affects their property values as well, although I have no detailed report for them. So I would like to end that to just say that, let's see, lost my place, sorry. Okay, so what Northlight Realty Trust proposed in February and brings before the board today is on a whole different level than the existing businesses and what is reasonable on Route 44. It is not reasonable to expect people to experience excessive noise, pollution, and odor that this project presents. It is not reasonable for people to experience such noises and interruptions during the course of the night. It violates our right to enjoy peace and quiet in our homes, and it compromises our quality of life. It exposes us to unnecessary health risks, and it causes a loss to our property values well into the range considered excessive. So we respectfully offer these thoughts to you, and we appreciate your time and consideration. If anybody would like a hard copy of any of the reports from the realtors or from the underwriter, I can provide them to you.
If you could provide them to Maureen.
Yeah, I will.
So, each thing that comes in, we'll just hold as evidence.
And now, in the event
Can we
that...
take these, or is this only?
No, I actually have plenty of pictures. I made packets for you, but they're not accurate. I have pictures for you. They include 2 of the letters. You can have this if you'd like. This is what Dan Gavea dropped off to my home this afternoon. Again, proceed with caution with it. It does not reflect, I don't want to say that $20,000 isn't a lot of money, because I don't want
He didn't understand the magnitude of it.
Well, we didn't give him enough time to prepare. Yeah, he did a great job with the limited amount of resources and time frame that he was working in.
Now that he's been out there and seen the house, maybe he could do a better report.
Yes, I will return to him and ask him for a more thorough evaluation, now that he's familiar with it. My concern was that this hearing would be closed tonight, so I needed to have something to go on. In the event that it is not closed tonight, I will certainly come back with a more detailed report.
I'm pretty sure it's not going to be closed tonight, Chris?
No, I don't think it's, well...
So that's why I was on the fence about even submitting this. I figured that...
If you want, hold off and have them...
Okay, I would prefer to, just so that I am a stickler for accuracy, and it's only going to make my loss bigger, which is sad to say works in my benefit here.
Well, we're not closing this tonight. There's still a bit of back and forth. The planning board has a lot of discretion as far as approval of a site plan goes, whether something fits in the neighborhood or not. And those opinions, some are kind of formulated, some are being formulated. Hours of operation, all this stuff is under our purview. Right now, we have to send this information out. One, we're waiting for our engineer to look at Beals and Thomas's response, which, we just received a lot of this stuff in the past couple of days. Bob's going to get a time frame from Epsilon, so I'm thinking we at least continue it till September 6th. I don't know how long. Did they give you any idea? Or they just said we're busy?
They should have.
I mean, we just contacted them, today? They called you back.
My personal feeling would be, I wouldn't continue too far out, because they have a lot of information to present. If we go too far, there's going to be, that's only one issue. We gave them an awful lot of stuff to gather information on, so.
Well, we could have them see, could the applicant, do you want to come back the 16th then? Or do you want to come back September 6th. And there'll be no more notification to anyone on when these meetings are continued to. That just gets notified for the start of the public hearing. So whatever we continue to, you'll have to keep in your memory bank.
To know when the meeting is.
Yeah, well, you can be responsible for letting everyone know.
You have a lot of information to bring forward. When do you want to,
I think there's so much on the table, I think we have to pick away at the issues. So even if we went to September, we'd be overloaded that night. So let's go out 2 weeks, and we'll deal with whatever issues we can in 2 weeks and see if we can shorten the list. I mean, there's a lot going on here. You've asked a lot of questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. I don't see any benefit in kicking everything over to September 6th.
Okay.
It'd be too much, better to spread it out a bit, and it'll give Epsilon a chance to respond. And then if you decide you need more information from Epsilon, then you'll be able to do it at that time, make the request.
Well, what I'd like to do then is, well,
Just so you know, you're not going to get a response from Epsilon until probably at the very earliest, the second meeting in September. So you won't have anything to review on the 6th, I don't believe.
okay. Well, they're talking August 16th, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, you could talk about some other issues that we discussed tonight.
Yeah.
There's so much on the table.
We roll this off.
There's a ton of information that we
Several
can
more
discuss.
meetings to that.
Okay, well, why don't we make it August 16th at 6:30, then if there's small things that come in, like my brother stuck out back there, they don't get stuck here for 3 hours for a 10-minute job. So that way we'll make it at 6:30, that'll give us time to take care of any other business we may have, or small plans to endorse, that type of thing. So I guess I'd make a motion to continue this till August 16th at 6:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's the only notice you're going to get is right now, that it's August 16th at 6:30. You need a recess, old man?
Can we, Mr. Chairman, can we take 5?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, after a brief recess, we're reconvening Planning Board meeting August 2nd, 2018. The next public hearing is Cornerstone Estates subdivision. If I had known that was going to be so long, I probably would have taken it out of order for 1,000 New State Highway, but my brother Frank is involved, and he canceled my fishing trip with me and my son tomorrow, so I made him sit in the room till 9 o'clock. So no striper for you.
Small town politics, don't you love it?
And Johnny's still yet to catch his first keeper striper. But I will hand the meeting over to my vice chairman, Burke Fountain, and I'll be stepping out. So,
Okay, public hearing on Cornerstone Estate subdivision. I think that's on first meeting?
No. It's continued.
It's a continued, okay.
Okay,
Take over.
all right. Frank Gallagher, Engineering, Foxborough. I'm here with Sean Carnes, who is the applicant, Shamrock Realty Trust. And so we did present the project at an earlier hearing, and we got, the board asked for an engineering review from Niche Engineering. And the engineering review was, I think, mainly to be kind of address the culvert that we've proposed as part of this roadway.
I'm sorry, Frank, but for people at home, where are we?
Okay, we're on the south side of King Street. We're approximately opposite the subdivision that's King Estates. Duke Drive is here, opposite, and we're across the street from that. It's about a 13-acre parcel.
And how many lots?
3 lots we're proposing.
All right, thank you.
And so we did get an engineering review letter from Niche Engineering, and that was July 11th. And so we've made some revisions as a result of that letter that we got from them. And we've presented revised plans to both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. We had a hearing last night with the Conservation Commission, which was continued. But what I wanted to do was just kind of go through where we're at as a result of the changes that have come about because of the review letter from Niche Engineering. And one thing is that we submitted a new waiver letter, just to keep you up to date. We've actually.
And that's your July 26th letter?
Yes.
Okay.
And we actually are asking for fewer waivers than what we had originally asked for. And I guess part of that, I think, was me, where I was asking for waivers, and when I looked a little more closely at the regulations, we actually didn't want waivers from certain requirements, particularly some of the construction-related things that I think are in Section 9.
Okay.
Because for the most part, we're going to construct the roadway, the way the subdivision regulations ask for. We're just constructing a somewhat different roadway, a lesser road in width. But the methodology is still the same, the depths of gravel and the depths of pavement and just the methods of construction. And so we're not asking for any waivers from those things.
How did you take care of what I saw as the biggest issue was
runoff from east to west, crossing over the street?
What we did was we're actually handling it the same as the design hasn't changed in the respect that we still have a cross culvert that's going to take stormwater runoff that's mostly off-site runoff and route it under the roadway. But the culvert itself has been revised. Originally, we proposed just some concrete pipe culverts. We actually had 5 12-inch concrete pipes laid side by side as a culvert, because what happens is the stormwater from all these properties that are above the site, or they're actually east of the site pretty much, everything drains toward this site and toward a wetland right here. And if you look at our roadway profile, we're raising our roadway in that area. So to eliminate the damming effect that you'd get from that raised roadway, we're proposing a culvert. Niche Engineering suggested that rather than use the concrete pipes, that we use, they said, an opened bottom culvert. So what we revised
What is an open bottom culvert?
Well, I guess it's a culvert that has vertical sides and a top, but then an earth bottom to it.
So it's like a bridge? Like a bridge?
Pretty much, yeah. What I have submitted now is a culvert that's basically really the standard concrete box culvert, but with earth filled in on the inside. These are standard items that you can get from a precast concrete company, and they're, structurally adequate for H20 loading and all of that. So rather than reinvent the wheel, what I'm proposing is that we use a box culvert, but we fill in the inside of it with a certain amount of material.
Why do they want the material inside of it?
Well, Niche Engineering, I think, proposed it, and I have yet to really talk to him, but I think that he was proposing it, and if you read his letter, I don't know if this was his only reason for doing it, but he said that if you do that, you don't fill as much of the wetland, and you don't, but realistically...
Well, I thought it'd be just the opposite, because whatever you put in there eventually is going to wash out into the wetland.
Yeah, well, I think that that's definitely, potentially, that could happen. I mean, but he suggested initially that an open bottom culvert would have less impact on the wetlands. I don't think it's going to have less impact on the wetland, because if you cover over that section of wetland, it's not going to grow as a wetland, it's not going to function as a wetland, it's not going to get any sunlight. So essentially, you're going to kill the vegetation there simply by covering it over. So I don't think you really gain anything by doing what he's suggesting, but he's suggesting it, and so I guess we're trying to meet his request.
Did Conservation have anything to say about it?
They didn't really, I mean, I think most of the members, when we presented it to them last night, said, okay, that's fine, that's, you know, that'll accomplish the same end that Nitch is asking for. But we did continue that hearing because I think they're waiting, they hadn't heard any response back from him on this revised set of plans.
Okay.
Did you provide any street trees? You did such a nice job over on that other one.
Actually, we asked for a waiver from that.
Really? They look so nice. The other guy on Church Street, he did a nice job too. Put some nice street trees up and some stonework.
Yeah, it looks really good over there.
Almost as nice as White Street. If more, you know, these 3-lot subdivisions look like those two, then the other thing too that we've made a note, and I did order one for mine, was we are going to be requiring that we have underneath the street sign says private way.
Okay.
There's a company right in the industrial park that I just ordered it right online, and $75, and so I think we should make a note on that, because we're going to require White Street to get one too. Any private way that comes up, we're going to start. Bob had mentioned it's good for highway department. Exactly, Atlantic Broom. So just to make a note on your plan.
So it's, again, the waivers have changed, the request for waivers has changed. This culvert has changed. And then he asked for a couple of other things. He asked for an erosion control plan. We had initially asked for a waiver from that requirement. But he asked for it, and we said, fine. So we did submit, the plan set now is 7 sheets, and the last of the 7 is an erosion control plan. So we're no longer asking for a waiver from that requirement, and this is our erosion control plan. We have a 50-foot anti-tracking apron proposed at the entrance, you know, so that during construction, the hope is that that tracks less mud off-site.
Well, that's in our rules and regs anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But, you know, given the size of the subdivision, the DEP stormwater standards don't apply to such a small subdivision, and typically that erosion control is part of the DEP standards. So we had initially asked for a waiver from that.
As soon as you go to highway, he's going to make you do it anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an addition to the plan set. And then he also asked that we look at the potential for downstream impacts from stormwater. And so we submitted a revised stormwater analysis. And I mean, the stormwater analysis, for the most part, is the analysis of that culvert. But we added this plan to the analysis, and I added a narrative on what happens downstream of the site. And if you look, here we are, and here's King Street. This is the Carriage Hill subdivision, which is a pretty new subdivision. And you can see this hatch is wetlands, and this is off the town's GIS maps. So it's approximate, but I think it's pretty accurate on our site, and I think it's pretty accurate, at least in the vicinity that we're looking at. So stormwater comes off of our site at about elevation 70. And it comes down south through this wetland area, and then where this narrows, it begins to form Dam Lot Brook. And as you look, you can see the contours drop pretty steeply south of this Carriage Hill subdivision, and then it opens into this pretty vast wetland area. And the first restriction point that it hits, beyond our site or downstream from our site, is there's a culvert that carries it under Route 24. Now, I don't know what that culvert consists of, but I make the point that
It's got a long way to go.
right, it's got a long way to go. It's got about a 40-foot drop in elevation from our site to this culvert, and it's got this huge wetland area that absorbs an awful lot of stormwater. So I think, we can say that the impact of a 3-lot subdivision, when you look at this as a potential restriction point and you look at this as stormwater storage, is really just a drop in the bucket. So
I agree.
But he asked us to address it, so we did.
Okay.
And, I mean, other than that, I don't, there actually too, we talked some about the Hammerhead turnaround, and, we were looking at what the subdivision, Tomlin Estates on White Street, and, the feeling was that maybe we came up a little short in hindsight on that. And I did speak to the deputy fire chief, and I got his feedback, and he felt the same way about Tomlin. And what he asked for was a 50-foot, he asked for 50 feet on either side of the hammerhead. So this has all been revised to accommodate that. So both these have been lengthened out so that you have 50 feet to set a truck on either of these 2 points.
Do you show water, sewer and hydrants on the plan?
Yeah, we have a sewer stub that's right where our roadway comes off of King Street. There's a stub right there, so we propose a manhole right there. And then the 3 lots are all going to be Environment 1 type sewer pumps. So we have a clean-out manhole at the end of the road, and then we have a force main where the 3 pumps will feed into that. And that force main, it's a 2-inch force main, and that is going to pump all the way to the manhole that we're proposing. So all 3 lots have low-pressure type pumps.
So the 3 lots each have a low-pressure pump?
Yeah.
And then you have another pump?
No. Just
a clean out at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a manhole that would allow it for a clean out of the force main that's in the roadway, if it's necessary.
Oh, okay, all right.
Sewer department's probably going to require you to give them a drawing of what you're going to do for the sewer anyway.
I have. I met with John McGarry before we submitted and talked with him about it, and you know, we had some emails back and forth. He gave me the details on the clean-out manhole and the Environment One pumps and all of that, and those details are on the plan set. This is the clean-out manhole. This is the E1 pump in detail. These are basically that's the sewer service that goes from, you know, from the house, and how it's tied into the 2-inch force main. Those are all details that I got from the sewer department that I incorporated in the plan set.
They make an indoor E1, and it's late, so I'm not going to get into it, but if you look up E1 indoor systems, comes with a 5-year warranty instead of a 1-year warranty, and they're 20 gallons more. They hold 20 gallons more than the outside ones, and they're really nice. Sewer department, they've never even seen it until I put one in over there, and plumbing inspector wasn't sure about it neither, and once he started researching it, it's a really nice unit. You don't have to dig down deep outside. Everything flows right. Everything can tie right into it. It's a nice little unit. It's the same exact pump as outdoors, except winter times you don't have to worry. Something happens. Everything's indoors. It's all protected.
So I mean, that's pretty much everything. Just one note that by using the box culvert now, you know, it's designed for a 100-year storm event. So, you know, that water comes to the culvert, and at a point it backs up. And the pipe culverts that I had originally proposed, I had what they call head, which is the buildup of water behind the pipes or upstream of the pipes, because they do restrict flow. That was 1.9 feet. So what I have is the culvert here, and I have a 92 contour that that follows like this, and this is the property line. So when I did this originally, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have a headwater that would exceed 2 feet. So that way it all stays contained within this 92 contour and nothing flows off-site. With the box culvert, that's actually been reduced now, so that the backwater has gone from, it was like 91.8. With the pipe culverts, it's now 91.3. Because of the, you know, hydraulic properties of that box culvert, it reduces the head.
The only other thing I see on Nich's report is the open space. Did you, K, section 8.15, I don't see any waiver requests, so requires to provide open space as deemed by the board. Niche engineer recommends that the applicant discuss this waiver with the board to determine if lot sizes can be considered open space for each lot, or if additional open space. Now, I don't see any waiver requests, so is that something that's...
I mean, that, as I read that regulation, it seemed to me is that it pertained to subdivisions that were 10 lots or more. It's, if you read it, that's at least how I read it. You might want to take a look and see what you think, but I thought, since this is such a small subdivision, that regulation didn't even apply to us.
Because you have regular 40,000 square foot lots, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're actually, you know, quite a bit more than that. But
other than that, with 40,000 square foot lots, the only thing, going through Nich's stuff, and I don't know if Bob had anything, but other than the shade trees, I don't myself have a problem with the waivers. I would like to see the shade trees. I think as a private little development, I think it's a nice feature. And we require it on a regular subdivision, and I think it's not a big deal to put them in. And adds a lot to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think what our thinking was is, you've got about 400 feet of road before you actually even get to a house lot. And there would be trees on the house lots. But I think our feeling was leading up to that maybe it wouldn't be necessary to be putting those trees every 40 feet.
Yeah, you're gonna do a substantial amount of clearing for that road because this bolt there's a lot of ground that has to be moved, so it's gonna get pretty disturbed. And I think we're not requiring sidewalks or anything within that 10 feet of both sides of the road. You put in a few of them, like I wouldn't even specify distance, but I would just not give the waiver for the shade trees. And he did a nice job on his other one. I'm sure he'll do a respectable job on this one too.
Yeah. So whatever the board wants.
Other than that, I don't have a problem with any of the other waivers.
Bob, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I think we should just wait for the response to his, Nietzsche's open box culvert idea with your new design. I haven't heard his response to your response to him. I think everything else you pretty much covered. And then I would wait for an okay from Brian LaCivita, because I haven't heard anything from him either on your new design for your hammerhead. And other than that, I think the shade trees are a good idea. Maybe you don't want to specify, distance between, but maybe you want to say, a certain number of trees, so you don't get 1 or 2, you get 6 or 8 or whatever you think is appropriate. Other than that, I think, you pretty much covered all the concerns we had before.
So we should hear back from everyone within 2 weeks?
I would, I expect.
I presume that the client would like to get this moving?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, between Brian for the fire department and Nitch on his culvert, would we be able to approve it if there's any, you know what I mean?
They're two minor issues. If you
Right.
want to get rid of this tonight, you can get rid of it tonight.
Because 2 weeks from now, we're going to be busy again with what's coming up, and this way, at least his 20-day time period can start the appeal.
And,
I can tie those other 2 issues together on my own.
Yeah, and if there's anything, I'm sure,
And,
specifying amount of trees,
because with the deputy fire chief, he asked for this, and I've given him just what he asked for.
Yeah, I think like Bob said, he works with them on a day-to-day basis just about, so Bob can, take care of those issues. And if there is any,
Go ahead.
if there is anything outstanding, obviously Bob's not gonna, he's gonna tell us, he's not gonna go forward.
Okay, section 3.7, project review fee. What's that about?
We decided that we were going to have the same engineering company review the Concom's stormwater management plan, so that we didn't have to pay for 2 different review fees. It was all
Okay.
wrapped up in one.
So technically, is he paying us or is he paying conservation?
We have a bill that we signed tonight for this subdivision from Nitch.
Okay,
So we're paying, I guess we're paying for it.
Yeah.
he's paying the planning board,
I don't know if he's billed for
and
Concom's.
conservation's going to give him
No,
a...
the agreement was that he would do the same review for us that he would give to conservation to eliminate having 2 people looking at the same thing, which he agreed to. So I don't believe conservation's going to get a bill. It's just this bill we have in front of us.
So I would suggest that you give conservation a copy of that, the paid bill,
Yeah.
just so they know that it was taken care of.
Okay, so we're not giving a waiver on that. Environmental impact statement, I think we can waive. If anyone disagree with me, let me know. The stormwater management closed drainage system, detention and retention basins.
Right, we don't have anything proposed.
So do we need a waiver?
Yes.
Okay.
What's in our specs is different than what's the design was.
8.6, access width within the subdivision.
So, yeah. That actually, 8.6, the title of it is obligations, if you look at that section. And it says, "The board shall require as a condition of its approval of a subdivision plan that the developer construct access ways to a width as required in these regulations, and that applicant make physical improvements within such way or compensate the town for the cost of such improvements in order to meet the standards specified above."
Well,
So I guess
as long as we're getting something from the fire department, and their recommendation is we get something from the fire department that the width is acceptable, so they can tell us that the width is acceptable and the hammerhead at the end is acceptable in the same letter. Okay.
Okay.
Um, 8.9, alignment of streets.
Yeah, that, if you look at the letter, initially we asked for a waiver from section 8.9, but there's a lot of things in that section that we really aren't looking for a waiver from. So I specified just what we do want the board to waive. And the first thing is the center line radius.
Okay.
And you can see that we take this sharp corner, and so that's less of a radius than what your regulations call for. So we were asking for a waiver from that.
Well, that's more of a radius, you mean?
It's a smaller.
Oh, tighter,
radius.
tight, yeah, so it's...
So, and that allows us to limit the amount of wetland filling. So that's why we did that. And then the right-of-way width, we're asking for 40 feet rather than 50 feet.
Okay.
The width of pavement, we're asking for a waiver from. And then 8.9P actually says conform with the typical cross-section that's in the appendix. So we're asking just for a waiver that allows us to not have to conform with that.
All right, 8.12, above-ground utilities, including street trees.
Um, 8.12 is actually driveway opening curb cuts.
Okay, so why are we talking about, in their letter, requirements to have above-ground utilities including street trees, minimum 10 feet from the driveway?
Yeah, that's 8.12 says driveway openings shall be located on the definitive plans. All above-ground utilities, including street trees, shall be a minimum of 10 feet from the driveways.
You're doing in-ground utilities, you can't have above-ground, you're going to put power on the ground, right?
Right.
You're not asking for a waiver from that because you don't allow that in this town.
Right. Before or after acceptance, any change included but not limited to the width, location, profile for driveway openings from the definitive plan shall require a curb cut from the highway department. Driveway openings shall be shown on the house and roadway as-built. So
The only curb cut you're gonna have from the highway, because this is a private way, is gonna be at King Street. It's the only one you're gonna have.
Okay,
So, as far as Niche read that, they said, give the waiver, we don't have any issue with it.
All right.
So
9.7 drainage, have you given them the drainage design they asked for?
Yes. In fact, I should have mentioned that because that's another change that came about. One of the things that Niche also asked for was, if you look at this road, if you were, walking down the road, rather than crowned like you typically see, this roadway is all pitched from right to left, steady. So all the stormwater basically sheds across the road like this. And one of Niche's comments was that we provide a grass swale on that side of the road to gather the stormwater. So if you look, we did that, and we added to our typical cross-section a 3-foot grass swale on the low side, and we showed it here. So that basically leads all the stormwater from the roadway to the entrance, the upstream entrance.
So
to the
do you need a waiver on drainage, or are you meeting our?
No, we do need a waiver because we don't have catch basins and manholes, and we don't.
Okay.
We don't have any of that.
Okay.
It's just country, what they call country
Yep.
type drainage.
9.9 curbing, I'm sure you're not putting any of that in?
Right.
Okay. No sidewalks? And we are going to put shade trees. What are we going to ask for shade trees? Certain number?
Ask for 8.
8 shade trees?
That way there's no dispute.
Okay, I make a motion that we waive section 6.0, sections 8.1 to 8.4, section 8.6, subject to a letter from the fire department that they are satisfied with the driveway width. Section 8.9, specifically E, J, L, and P. Section 8.12, Section 9.7, 9.9, 9.10. The Section 9.16, insofar as it would require the planting of more than 8 shade trees. Second?
Second.
Anybody have any comments? Anything you want to add? Okay. And this is also subject to the fire department approving the hammerhead turnaround design and niche engineering approving the box culvert. Okay. Can I have a plan? Can I have the plan?
Cornerstone Estates definitive subdivision.
Oh,
He wants the plan, so you can read
Well, I
it.
don't, if somebody can read it there, make the motion.
Far away.
Make a motion that we accept the plan entitled definitive plan of the subdivision of land in the town of Raynham, Mass, situated off of King Street, prepared for Shamrock Realty Trust, prepared by Gallagher Engineering. Are all these dated the same, or do they have all different dates on them?
The revision date is the same.
All right, dated March 27, 2018, revised last July 25th, 2018, subject to the waivers as granted and subject to the fire department and niche engineering issues.
Second.
Any further discussion? Everybody's happy? All in favor?
Aye.
Did you guys vote on the waivers separately?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear the actual vote, it was 4-0, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Okay.
It's worth the wait.
You get paid the whole time we are here, right?
I make a motion to waive the reading, accept the minutes of July 19, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Invoice bills we took care of, minutes we took care of, we don't have any correspondence. The planning coordinator update.
I'll just give you a quick update of what's going on around town. The hotel is in high gear. They're putting in the foundations as we speak. They have a foundation-only permit, still waiting for the rest of the paperwork to get the permit for the structure. They've had some issues out there. They have a lot of unsuitable material, so it's been a little bit longer than they expected to get to where they are today. But they're quickly getting their foundation. They're going pretty quickly. I got a Bradford trailer is actually coming in for a demo permit. I spoke to their contractor. They're going to be on a busy schedule too, so once you see some activity there, they're going to be moving quickly there. CVS. Lopes has been doing the site work there. They're working on the drainage. They do not have a building permit yet. I've been waiting patiently for building permit, so I actually had to stop them because they were building the retaining wall. So Lopes came in and got his own permit to build a retaining wall, because it would have been part of the building permit, but because the contractor is having to come forward with a building permit, Lopes pulled the permit for the retaining wall. So it's only site work and the retaining wall right now. I'll keep you posted as to when the contractor comes in. Kia dealership, they were almost better tearing that building down. They did so much work to that building, but that's going full steam ahead too. Honey Ham, you guys see what's going on there? They're poking away at that thing. It's an interesting situation there.
Slow process.
It's a very, very slow process, and it's very difficult to communicate, but we get to where we are today. And I'm still waiting for, I talked to another person who works at Lopes about the Center Street lights. They were my contact. They were where I was getting all the information that I was sharing with you. They're very frustrated now, too. The engineers are just dragging their feet. And I got a call into someone at District 5, hoping they can give me some more information. No response yet. The selectmen are actually very concerned about it now. They're trying to, get some answers, and I've been trying to be the catalyst to get the answers, but it's been difficult to get any information from anybody. That's my update.
Okay. Serpent?
Yeah, there was a Serpent meeting. One of the thing I wanted to mention, other than the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers has been asked to review the filling of a half acre of wetlands as part of the South Coast Rail. That's not all in one place, it's all along the way, but the Army Corps, which might be another stumbling block, I don't know. But anyway, one of the things that came up in the Serpent meeting that I think might apply to tonight as well, there's a young lady there, and I forget if she was from Attleboro or North Attleboro from the Planning Board. She said that they have a particular contractor that comes in frequently, and whenever they refuse him, he takes them to court, and the town loses all the time. So the first recommendation we gave her is get a new lawyer, because obviously something's wrong, you shouldn't lose. But the guy from Dayton piped up, and I guess I haven't seen a case since I've been on the board where we've turned someone down completely and sent them away. And if we did, I missed it. But the guy from Dayton said whenever they refuse a site plan, they have the legal department or the council write the decision. And they take it as far as, even when they approve one, if there are stipulations, you got to do this, that, they have the town council write that up as well. That way, it's in the right words, because one of her problems is, the planning board is putting it together. Now, we have the benefit of having a lawyer on our planning board, okay? They don't. So they don't necessarily word it properly, and they get defeated in court all the time. I offer that just as information of what other towns are doing. Whether or not it applies to us, I have no idea, but I just hang it out there for you.
Yeah, and if you read the bylaw, it's not up to, they adopted it in 1953. It's the description of the approval process is not much favorable for denials. It's not up to a planning board to deny a process or a plan that comes in front of us for somebody to subdivide their land. It's up to us to protect the health and safety of people that are going to be accessing it. That's why a majority of them get denied or get bounced back to the town. Anytime you deny something, you have to make sure we have it written down in our rules and regs. If it's not spelled out in our rules and regs, you cannot list it as a reason for denial. If it's in our rules and regs, you specify 5.1, that's one reason. 5.2, that's one reason. If it's not in the rules and regs, then
we can't deny it.
Then you're not denying it, or else you're going to lose.
I just thought I'd offer that for proof of thought. Have that as well.
Do we have any plans to endorse?
We do not.
We do have one further thing for Katrina's Path. Well, we should divvy up some cash to refund Marcia's candy that we robbed tonight.
Okay, he wasn't watching TV.
So late, but Katrina's Path, Highway Department, they were doing White Street, and Ed was concerned about Katrina's Path not being completed, not having handicap accessible sidewalks and all that other good stuff. I had asked Maureen to pull out the dates and the certificate of action, just so we can vote to ask the applicant to come in front of us at our next meeting to give us an update. And we do have a bond, security, but that thing's got to be over 8-9 years old. So he's long past our 2-year time period that our bylaw says, and Ed's just a little worried that the bind is not going to be any good anymore pretty soon, if it's not already, so.
I did have a conversation with a gentleman who.
And you made me go through all that?
I didn't know if you had any new information that I didn't know about. But he did finish his last house. He had a problem with his contractor, so the last house was finished recently and occupied. And when I was there for that final inspection, I did have a discussion with him about the roadway and the grading. You can see that the vertical granite curving is about 3 or 4 inches higher than all the yards were graded at. So there's a lot of blooming left to do, and there's a sidewalk, I believe, that needs to be put on one side.
Right.
He did tell me he's in the process of trying to find someone to finish it for him, but he did not give me a time frame. So I think your suggestion about bringing him in front of the board is a good idea.
Yeah, I think so, because then we give him we let him know that it's, he's on the radar, and before things crash, things get bad, we're going to own another road if we don't get him on the hot seat to get it done. Plus, it's, quite a few years old. So I would
The only,
motion to have Maureen invite him in at the next meeting and give us an update of Katrina's path.
I'll second that.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
This Terrell Road, did he just give up on the whole idea, or did he just not show tonight?
No,
No.
he hasn't given up.
He just didn't make it
I
tonight?
have the original plan and approval when he comes here. We'll discuss that.
Okay.
Adjourned.
No motion, no vote?
Meeting adjourned.
Well, you sucked that candy down.
Everybody says,